Liz.
In the park, summer is gone. Summer is gone. Summer is gone. To break your fall.
Summer break. Hello and welcome to Power Reflections, a proud member of the Duff Network where we reflect on Wildbow's most recreational work as it releases. I'm Ruben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
And we are back to talk about more summer break in the world's longest arc. I never want it to end, Elliot. I just want us to get more breaks and see more Carmine Contestants break over the course of these chapters.
I mean, it's interesting because you're the one who's had the whole like it'll end in 13.13. I'm wondering how you feel
the next
about
main chapter.
Yeah. You still because I mean I could see it, but fuck, that's going to be a packed chapter.
Yeah. I'm struggling to. So now here's my biggest piece of evidence that I think it's going to end in 13.13, Elliot. Otherwise, I reckon Wildbow would have ended this arc by now. He invented the breaks just to pack more into this arc, right? Like, clearly, Wildbow also wants to try and end it on 13.13, which means, I mean, we just got break 4. I don't think our next chapter is going to be 13.13. I think we're going to get a break chapter next. Or we get 13.13 and then 2 break chapters and then, I don't know, like another break chapter. I have no idea how this can all resolve with just one more chapter. So we'll see. It still feels like it's going to happen to me though, right? Like, even though I know it feels impossible, like I'm half expecting maybe the next chapter will be like 13.12.2 or something. 13.12 and a half, anyway, I feel like we just need one more chapter to fit in there somehow and we can get there.
Yeah, I mean you're right. The breaks are certainly helping. I tend to agree though. Like this arc is now I think 200,000 words, which is like 25% bigger than.
It's a 16 chapter long arc. Like, have there been any arcs that have been this long?
It just means that then I'll be if 13.13 is sort of where the story's ending, I'm going to need a lot of epilogues.
Well, I don't think so. I think it's possible to get 13.13 and then 1 or 2 more breaks, but I think it'll be the last, normally numbered chapter, which means it'll be our last, I'm assuming, Avery perspective chapter, maybe Lucy again. I don't know.
Yeah, God.
Until the epilogues, at least.
That must be the trickiest part of doing a story like this, because with the 3 protagonists, because if there is going to be one chapter with this sort of ultimate final fight, how do you pick who it's going to be?
Yeah. Maybe it'll be like 13.13 all or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, God,
which I think has happened a few times.
Yeah, that feels like it would almost have to be.
Yeah. Before we talk about these chapters, though, a bit of a reminder: we're in our countdown to the comet. We're rapidly approaching the end of the story, and that means we're rapidly approaching our 25-hour live stream. We've been planning some more potential things that we're doing for it this week, Elliot, and I am very excited.
Actually, I haven't even told you. We've gotten a few other people have reached out with ideas. Like people who are coming on. So we're actually reaching the point. I think we've got too much content now. We're gonna have to start picking things.
Maybe we can make it more than 25 hours, Elliot.
No,
we can have a 48-hour. I'm not even.
No, we'll be forsworn if we do more than 25. So we'll just have to cut stuff.
Fair enough. What are you telling me? We can't just have some segments that are in there just to pad out the time while we're really tired at 3 a.m., Elliot. Oh my God. Those are the best segments. Anyway, just one other thing that we're going to be doing, because we're excited to talk about all these segments as they start to come together. We're going to be bringing back something that we did. Wait, did we do this last time? I can't remember now.
We did, yeah.
We did. Okay. In our previous charity live stream, which is the fan art review. So we're going to be getting a bunch of fan art and just kind of looking over some of our favorite fan art. So we'll obviously pick some out, but if you have fan art that you want to see us do, please send it to us on the Discord or on email.
Cut out the middleman even and just send it to Fairlax, because that
That's right.
That
True. We'll be using the
yeah,
the fan art spreadsheet.
realistically, 90% of what we talk about is going to be coming from that sheet. So get your art or your friend's art listed in that sheet, and then we'll definitely
Speaking of
see it
fan art,
in that segment.
Elliot, did you see the new piece of fan art that was posted of the trio this week
Yeah,
on the
the
subreddit?
Guardian,
Oh,
the Guardian one. It was so
so
good.
good. Brilliant. And that's the kind of highbrow comments that you
Yeah,
can expect more of
the
during
deep
the fan
analysis of
art week.
art.
Deep analysis of, yeah, that was really good. No, we'll go a bit deeper. We'll go a bit deeper. I'll bust out my old art degree that I don't have. Anyway,
Yeah, I like failed out of year 8 art.
I remember having a really grumpy art teacher. You know how when you're in high school, a teacher really can
Yeah,
like determine your passion for something, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
And my my art teacher was atrocious. I also remember this is completely a tangent, but speaking on teachers determining things. So I'm like a programmer, developer now, but I remember doing IST is what it was called at the time, which is like the software development subject for students here in Australia and New South Wales. And my teacher, he was so bad. He would just sleep during class. He would be like, "Okay, here's your task," and give us like one page of instructions, and then fall asleep. And I didn't even do I love programming. I didn't even do it for year 11 and 12 just because I was so like over it. Anyway,
I was the only person in my class. So there was one other guy in year 11, and then he dropped out. So I like it was just me in the class.
mm,
And I was like closer to being friends than like a teacher pupil relationship with my
interesting.
software teacher. So I reckon we spent half the lessons just hanging out. Um, it's lucky I'd already decided that was the career I kind of wanted to go into because, yeah, it wasn't as productive a year as it could have been, really. But going back to the art stuff, you just reminded me as well. Like I think the moment I kind of gave up on art as something I could ever do was in year 8. We had to make these clay sculptures that were like an emotion.
Okay.
And so what you're meant to do is like you make the sculpture, you put it in the kiln or whatever for a week, and then in the next like a week later you get it back in class, and you're meant to paint it to represent your emotion.
But when
Anyway,
you
I was
took
super
yours
behind.
out, the only emotion it represented was disappointment.
I mean, yes, but um, so I decided to do anger, and I made this real angry looking little sculpture.
Mm.
And then I ended up falling really far behind, and I think I forgot to give it to the teacher to put in the kiln. Anyway,
Oh
so I was
no.
super behind. So basically, I got it back the day it was due, and I hadn't painted it or anything. So in the like 200 words I had to write alongside my submission, I wrote like, "Oh, it's not painted because that represents the raw power of anger or something."
Love that.
And I got really
Great
good marks
bullshitting.
for it, and that
Oh
was when I was like, "Oh,
no.
this is all bullshit." Like. This is nonsense. The real reason is because I was behind and I didn't have time to paint it. Yeah, that's what made me mentally quit art.
But like, should your teacher have been like, "That's bullshit"? Like, is it your teacher's job to call you out on your
But he knew
shenanigans like
he
that?
he knew that because he gave me the model as it came out of the
Ah.
kiln and was like, "You need to give this back to me in 5 minutes. Good luck painting it." And so then,
Oh.
so like he knew that it was because of the
And it was
time crunch,
bullshit,
and then I
right?
just come up with that bullshit in 5 minutes.
Good bullshitting though.
I mean, yeah, I was quite proud of it, but also it was complete
But yeah,
garbage.
very disillusioning, I guess is the word.
Yeah.
Speaking of illusions, let's talk about this story.
Good enough.
That'll do as a segue. So yeah, we're talking about summer break 13-12 to start. We're in Verona's head, and so Verona breaks from the gang to head around the back and guard the back of the arena against the witch hunters. And it's not even 5 seconds after she gets there that it turns into a fight, like slinging spells and Breeze slinging kids at them. Yeah, it pops off immediately.
Classic Bray, just throwing kids around. I really like this moment where Verona sort of asks the other two, because obviously we know where this is sort of going, and Verona takes a second. She's like, "I'll take the front. You two go around back. Like, just trust me." And Lucy sort of looks at her, and Verona is really having to like force herself to be like, "That's not mistrust. She's just like worried, and that's normal and reasonable." It kind of looks like mistrust but it's not. And she almost has to let herself have that like faith in Lucy that like Lucy's not mistrusting her, like Lucy's processing something else, and then she gets rewarded by Lucy giving her that same benefit of the doubt. Like it comes back to Lucy's whole teamwork thing from last week. Where like Verona sort of says what she wants to do and gives them the benefit of the doubt and how they're processing it, and then they give her the benefit of the doubt and assuming that she can in fact do it.
Yeah. Do you think? I mean, the Kenneteers. We obviously have seen them be barely on the same page, I suppose.
Mm.
Do you think we're going to see some rough ramifications of that before this story wraps?
I mean, that depends if you're right. If it's 1313, I don't know when we're gonna fit it in. Like, we don't have time. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Mm, yeah.
I I honestly I have to admit, like, something that I definitely noticed this week, like, for those who don't follow the live reads, I had a crazy week and I ended up reading the chapters super late, and I'm loving the break chapters, but I'm also, because, my memory is such dog shit, I'm definitely losing track of, like, the Kenneteer plot threads a little bit. I'm having to specifically go out of my way to remind myself what happened in 13.11 as we hit, like, the next Kenneteer chapter.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, you're right. It's easy to, at least up until this chapter, I think the break chapters have been where the main action is. Like the Kennedy chapters have been them protecting the arena, which is great, but it's not like it doesn't feel as important conceptually as the Carmine contest, or like even the Carmine contest is so big narratively that it occupies your brain. So it's
Yeah.
you're right. It's been much harder to be like, oh yeah, only 2 chapters ago they were fighting those two witch hunters that were, husband and wife or whatever.
Yeah, and I just think my brain's not like good or big enough to juggle all those things at once very easily. So I'm
Mm,
like it definitely feels like I'm having to put in extra work to try and keep on top of what's happening in both places. Not that I
yeah.
want anything to change about that though, because I'd be livid if we didn't have these breaks. Like imagine if we were
Yeah,
just
I
getting the
know.
Kenneteer
Imagine if
stuff, but
we, yeah,
we didn't know what was happening. Like
it
that'd
would be
be
so
awful.
wild. I mean, there's no way that would be the case, but yeah, it would be very wild. Um, So I like that we're in Verona's head for this section, but we obviously know what's. I mean, we don't know, but we have heard from the judges the gist of what has happened here, right? Like Verona got
Yeah.
told off, and we saw the witch hunters entering the arena, so we know that she doesn't stop them. There's this fun, like, dramatic irony here, I guess, that leads to a
Yeah.
really fun anticipation of this first part of the chapter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, because especially that first moment where Verona's like, sort of, you have to trust me that I can handle it. We sort of know, well, I mean, you do get in a bit of trouble, and we hear that it's a disaster. So, you know, it's not going to go perfectly. I think something that like really hit me harder, reading this was obviously like Verona has that moment where she's like, oh god, like, does Lucy trust me or whatever. In 13.11, or no, it might have been in break 3, I think, when the alabaster talks to Lucy.
Mm.
It's sort of like, oh, there's a disaster going on the other side, and Lucy just without hesitation goes, oh yeah, Verona could have gone too far, like she may have overdone it. Uh,
Which maybe is not giving Verona any slack, but also is true.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think that's what's funny is like like obviously Verona's sort of whole deal with the control of her life and her freedom and stuff has been both that she feels smothered and like both because that people think she can't do stuff and she does it too well. And so obviously it's
Yeah.
still touching on that, but I do think it's funny that like there was never a doubt in Lucy's mind that Verona couldn't do this. Lucy was worried that Verona might do too well at it.
Mm. Yeah.
Just because, like, she's going up by herself against like a squad of witch hunters. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I guess we'll talk about the conflict between her and the witch hunters in a second because she's pretty incredible in it. But
but like, so soon Verona's going to let herself feel a bit. I guess we'll get there when we get there. But Verona does let herself feel a bit like she's failed on her side when it comes back, and it's just like, yeah, we'll get there. It's the stupidest take.
yeah. The other interesting thing here, I think, though, is Raquel, right? Raquel is here. And,
Yeah,
like, in my head, I guess I hadn't thought about it that much, but I'd kind of, like, default assumed that, the people who are going to be interacting with Raquel out of the Kenneteers or have the highest chance of like swaying her would have been, in my mind, Avery and Lucy as the more like justice minded and connection minded of the group. But Verona's the one who takes the lead here, and she nails it. Like she does very well. I suspect the fact that she has experience with shit parents is what really helps sell this.
Yeah, because I suppose like with Verona, it's a bit like I guess I'd say Lucy and Avery have that knack for noticing when something's wrong, whereas I think Verona has
Mm,
always sort of said she doesn't quite notice it as quickly, but when Lucy or someone points it out to her, she's always then pretty good at being on the right side and noticing it after that.
yeah.
She doesn't have that same instinct for like identifying something that's unfair.
Mm,
And it's almost like in a way that kind of primes her to fight against someone like Raquel because I guess if it just comes naturally to someone like Lucy or Avery, they're just gonna like say it as if it's obvious. Whereas like if Verona kind of has had to go on a bit of the journey there and like logicked it out a bit more for herself, maybe she's more equipped to pass that logic on to Raquel. I don't know.
mm, mm. Yeah, I can see that. She doesn't. Interestingly, Raquel is still not on Team Kennedy, but I think it's as good as we're going to get at the moment because she
Yeah.
does do a few things that actively help keep Verona safe.
Yeah. Well, and so the thing about Raquel and Verona as well is, I was digging up some stuff for an All Packed Up 2 segment, and I'd totally forgotten. Raquel and Verona are the two who were paired when they went on the trip to the fairy courts.
Right,
Um,
right.
and so like with that in mind, I was like, oh, of course, like Raquel and Verona had to have a moment here because
Yeah,
like the whole thing that Estrella did, unless I'm like misremembering it, was like she put those pairings together, and it was like people who wouldn't click, but who also kind of had lessons to teach each other.
yeah,
Um, and obviously, like you've already made the comparison between Verona's family situation and Raquel's. Like, I
yeah.
think it's funny how these two are very, very different, but also quite similar. And this is sort of that aspect of their pairing coming back.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I forgot about that, but you're right. It extends perfectly. Um, I guess it's worth calling out the best line in these two chapters, which is Verona saying, "Just make sure you aren't missing the forest for your opportunities," which is fucking horrible and so good. It's absolutely perfect. So well played, Verona.
Yeah, I mean, I love how like after she says this, a goblin throws a piece of like fast food wrapping at her, and she doesn't question whether that was valid because it's totally an appropriate response to hearing that level of punnery.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I do love though, like this is, I guess, the level of seriousness Raquel's argument at that moment warrants because I
Mm.
think this is the point where Raquel is sort of saying, "Oh yeah, stuff will get bad, but then it always pretty much ends up back where it was, and so you just sort of try to ride that wave and end up better off, after it because it'll just go back to how it is, and just not making that mental leap of like, but you could try and make it better.
Yep. Yep.
We'll get
I
her
feel
there
like she's
eventually.
starting to get there, hopefully. I don't know.
Yeah. We've got to get her away from her dad. It's interesting how much more closed off she is. Like after, sorry, not her dad, her uncle
Mm.
comes in and out. Yeah. I mean, she kind of clarifies for us. This is something that there'd been a discussion on our Discord recently about. I think, like her collection includes a lot of old implements, which is like after
Mm.
somebody dies, their implement is a bit more primed to become a magic item. Which makes sense, but I love that as like a metaphor for how Raquel operates because she's taking other people's discarded leftovers. Like s- it's sort of such a perfect idea for how she fits into the Musser family.
Yeah, it's good. I like that she's not stealing implements from people, but you're right that it also is very it's a perfect representation of her being lower on the status, I guess. She can't get implements the actual way that the Mussers do it. She just kind of has to scrounge for scraps.
Yeah, she's still building herself off like the pathways other people have left in that very
Mm,
Mussery way, but she doesn't even get to actually take it from them. For her, it involves just getting the discarded leftovers.
yeah. um, so yeah, the Sable shows up and chastises Verona for potentially blocking contestants.
He
She
uses her
gets
full name too. How funny is the moment where
yeah.
it's like your mum calling from downstairs?
Yeah, it lands very well, doesn't it? But yeah, so she's left down on the ground as punishment and is now in a very dangerous situation. This is such a dick move. I kind of love it, but it's such a dick move by the Sable, and Verona is basically like seconds away from death now.
Yeah, it's I was like, wow, what a fuckwit. Like, it's really interesting, like having just come from the Alabaster's perspective, where you really felt the synergy and the effortless communication
Mm,
between the judges.
mm,
They almost seem distinctly out of sync when you're not in their heads. Um,
hmm,
I guess I'm leaping a bit because I guess it jumped out to me here because the Sable did this and I was like, yeah, what a dick move. Like, did he know she could get out of it, or like is he really pissed off with the Kenneteers for some reason and wants to punish them? And I guess like I was sort of primed for thinking that reading like the next chapter, and what really stands out from the other people's perspectives is how much it kind of seems like the judges aren't on the same page. Like every time somebody would suggest something, the Sable would be like, no, you can't do that, and then the Alabaster would say, "Oh, maybe we can do this," and then the
mm,
Aurum kind of always chimes in as the third, being like, "I am the negotiator," and now it's all sorted. And I think it's like a trick they play on everyone to kind of keep everyone on their toes because you're not sure. Like they've already made up their minds and they usually know what they're going to decide instantly, but they sort of play this game so that it seems more mysterious and less organized.
mm.
Is the vibe
Interesting.
I'm starting to get.
Yeah, I can see that. I I don't think that there's necessarily more to the Sable's decision to leave Verona on the ground here than just if I don't do something drastic, she won't actually listen to what I'm saying to the degree that I want her to, which I think is probably true.
Yeah, and I think there is an aspect of this, just that's just the Sable's character. Like, talk a lot about how death is just unforgiving and all that.
Mm,
Like, that's just it just sort of track with who we know of them. I think, and I mean that's why this routine they've sort of got. Why I think it works so well because the Sable being the one who always chimes in with, "No, this has already been decided," like sort of fits with their role and who they are, and then the Alabaster chiming in with like an option, and the Aurum sort of rounding out the compromise. Like it's a dynamic that suits each of their personalities and their roles, which is why it kind of works. But like just being out of their head, like that moment with John where they're like where the Sable's like, oh no, they can't leave. And John's like, wait, hold on. Are you pulling this shit on me too?
yeah.
And then that's when like the Alabaster gets to come in. It's like it's so clearly like what they already had. Even John sort of getting thrown around their loop as they try to like just fuck with people is what I'm
Mm,
thinking it is.
mm. But what's their goal? Is it just to make it seem like they're not as in sync as they are?
I don't. I'm the only idea I have at the moment is it's just like a like security through obscurity sort of move. Like it just
Mm,
like it hides their agenda a bit if it kind of seems like they're a bit all over the place and making these decisions up as they go.
mm,
Whereas like eventually Lauren Snyder sees through that and kind of picks that they have an agenda.
mm,
But I think that's harder to notice when it kind of feels like the Sable is always saying no, the Alabaster's always saying yes, and the Aurum's always meeting you in the middle.
mm,
Um, Whereas realistically, I think they're just putting out challenges. Like the Sable falls very easily so many times, but he always makes you to like justify it.
mm. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Um, back to Verona. So she's kind of stuck behind this tree, and she does really well here. Like I'm impressed with how
Yeah,
much she doesn't die. I guess
it's a lot. She doesn't die a whole
she
bunch.
doesn't die 100%, and I expected it to be 0%. But yeah, like she does. There's this great moment where she does this trick where she sends out these kind of glamoured birds and then a glamoured cat. And by the way, there's a mean little fake out here where friend is like, "Oh, send out the birds," but I'm not actually turning into the birds. I'm just kind of sending them out as tricks, and then I'll take out this cat thing and use it, forming a small cat, leaping forward, mid leap, getting shot 3 times. And until you read the next sentence, I was like, holy shit, Verona has just gotten shot 3 times. Like,
Yep.
fuck. And then the reveal that no, that was also a fake out cat. a fake out animal is wonderful. It's so
It's
mean by Wildbow.
yeah. Oh, yeah, no, exactly. It's clearly he knows what he did, and it's hilarious.
Yeah, because there's a thing where she thinks like, and then taking out the cat one and using it, and
Yeah.
he doesn't say using it by turning into a cat, but
The phrasing's
differentiating it from the
intentionally
phrasing of the bird is like
yeah.
very clear to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a good trick, and like so's Verona's. Like this is a very big brain move to do the double fake
Double
out
fake
and
out.
play like be the shadow of the cat. Like have your actual thing be that more like abstract one.
Yeah. Again, it's a very Naruto kind of move. I think that move has been used a few times in Naruto. So, I mean,
Have
first
you
the
just been
contest,
rewatching
now
Naruto or
this.
something? Why
I
were you? Why
honestly
is this a
haven't. I
Naruto show
don't know
now?
why it keeps coming into my brain, but this exact move is used by Naruto. He throws out a big, um, what do you call them? Shuriken, a big ninja star, and then transforms himself into a second ninja star hidden in the shadow of the first ninja star. It's like, anyway. So yeah,
Um,
maybe Wildbow's been watching Naruto.
yeah, I see. I for me, it was like, oh, this is a very Maricica move. It felt like it just again
Mm,
that reminder that Verona is very clever and very easily in sync with Maricica's flavor of glamour in
yeah,
particular.
yeah,
Like turning into the shadow. Yeah, just a great dark folly feeling trick. Um,
yeah, yeah.
can't wait to see those two come head to head.
I mean, the Kenneteers have been using Darkfall Glamour a lot, and we know as of later this chapter they haven't had a chance to like clean themselves of it. So I'm pretty nervous for that
I think
specific thread.
they do it eventually. I
Do
might be
they?
wrong, but yeah, because they have that moment where they're traveling and Verona's like, "Oh yeah, I haven't rinsed off," and then
Yeah, and
Lucy's
neither
like,
has
"You
Lucy.
idiot," and then Verona's like, "You haven't either, you dumbass." Like, um,
Oh,
so
okay,
I'm
yeah,
assuming
you're right. They
they
do.
did it after that.
There is a moment where Verona douses herself in water and soaks off the glamour by mistake.
Also, because we kind of need that moment because at first, like the timeline of the whole Brie thing, which we'll get to, I was like, they must have taken more time to rest up once they got downtown than I realized. Otherwise, the
Mm,
timing of this is insane.
mm.
Um, but yeah, I guess going back to Verona escaping the witch hunters on the ground, I love the leg tree. I thought that was very fun. Um,
Yeah.
and as she gets back up the top, she syncs up with Zed and checks in on Jasmine. And we keep getting reminded of exactly where Jasmine is and how fine she is right now and how in control of it they are. And it's gonna have to explode, right?
Mm.
Like it feels like every chapter we're being told, "Yep, Jasmine's still fine. It's all okay."
I
And
mean,
I
yeah,
don't
it's going to
trust
come
it.
in at the worst possible moment, surely.
Yeah, like I guess a part of me
Although,
thinks, oh, it just makes
mm,
sense that the Kenneteers would keep asking about her because she is so important.
yes.
But then also, I don't know. It just feels like because it's every single Kenneteer chapter, and even some of the breaks where we're getting reminders about how Jasmine is fine right now. I don't trust it.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard to say because I do feel like something that we get confirmed in a little bit is that the Kenneteers have pulled some tricks over on Marcy that have worked, right? Like,
Yeah,
despite the fact that it does feel like it's falling apart, the Kenneteers have taken some steps that have prevented the plan from unfolding exactly as Marcy wants it to, right?
yeah.
So,
We'll get there. Like we'll have some specifics when we talk to Liz. But I think you're right that there's a lot of signs that Mariska's got a lot more pressure on her than the facade of success would imply.
yeah, which I wonder whether Jasmine is one of those things, like a trick that Marcy had planned, but the Kenneteers have responded to it in a way that negates it enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, well, we know Miss has been sitting there watching the two of them the whole time. Like, it could just be that this guy is designed to take Miss out of the picture, or not designed to take Miss out of the picture, but by taking someone of Miss
Mm,
tier out of the picture,
that's
that
enough.
does
Yeah.
enough. Yeah,
Also, Zed was keyword probably was watching out for Jazz.
yeah,
That's
true.
probably changed to now.
Yes, we'll get to where Zed's at in a bit.
But yeah,
Um,
so
uh,
Sorry.
Sorry, I just have to call out this moment though. Like Verona, when Zed changes the channels on what he's watching, she quickly mentions that what happens to his tech is it gains a lot of old person television type snow. And I was just, fuck you, Verona. Like uh,
That she doesn't know that it's called like static.
static, yeah. Or just yeah, this is one of those moments where, like, so often I feel like I relate to the Kennedys, but every now and then you get those moments where Walbo reminds us that they're 13-year-olds, and this was definitely one of the ones that hit me the hardest. It was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's just static. How dare you imply that it's an old person thing?
Well, it's an old person TV thing. That static doesn't exist anymore, Elliot.
I know, but I don't need to be reminded of this.
Okay. Anyway, so Verona rejoins the others at the other side of the arena. They have reached an uneasy standstill with the witch hunters, who kind of head off. And Verona calls Y to try and get some eyes in the sky, but he says, "No way." It's perfect. The uneasy alliance that Avery and Lucy have formed here is so them. I just love it. I love that they are still making friends, even with the people that have tried to shoot them multiple times.
Yeah, it because this is what we were hoping would happen at the end of Break 3 is like, oh, does this open the wedge for an uneasy
Yeah,
truce? And it looks like
and
the
it
answer is
has.
yes. They managed
Yeah,
to, yeah, turn this. Clint keeps reminding us that all he's agreed to do is not shoot them this time, and I think the
that's
words
enough,
they get,
Clint. That's enough.
yeah, it's a start. I mean,
Yeah.
all good relationships start with not being shot this time. But yeah, I do like how they sort of get left. They're the reason they're allowed to leave is because they're quote minor and this is major.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good. I mean, it's funny how Verona manages to take it personally. Like she sees that they've done it, and she's a bit like, "Oh, I can't believe they do it." Like being clever with words is meant to be my thing, and you know that insecurity leaps in, and I'm just like, Verona was like, you were by yourself against 12 witch hunters being led by Cleo. These guys got like a pair and Clint and the Alabaster. Like it's not even a competition. Like that's not comparable at all. Winning over Clint with the Alabaster compared to you and the Sable against
Yeah,
Cleo. Of
with
course they
Cleo.
won.
Yeah,
Like,
like Cleo is never going to be able to be bargained with,
no,
or
especially
was,
now.
I should say. Yeah. Fuck you, Cleo. Yeah. But so the other thing that's worth noting here is Y's refusal to help out, which I get, but like because this story is almost certainly ending pretty soon, that means Y is never going to be on Team Kenneteer in this story, so he's effectively dead to me.
Yeah, this is one of those things where, like, with the musses and with why I'm starting to accept that these are victories that are not within the scope of this story.
Yeah, they're long-term victories, not for tonight
Yeah,
victories.
like I feel good about the place someone like Y is in now compared to like an arc ago. Like it's sort of like I think the Kenneteers have started him down a better road a little bit, but I'm not going to get to. I'm not allowing myself to believe we'll have his hero moment where he like breaks free of the programming in this story.
Mm. Maybe there will be some. Maybe Y will play into the resolution of how Musser's called in everybody to fuck over Kennett. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually a really good point. If anybody's going to have sort of the credibility to help get everyone else to piss off, it'd be someone
Mm.
like Y.
The head of the Belanger.
Yes. Or I mean, I'm not sure how big that
What
his
that
crew is. It
means
kind of seems
anymore?
like it's
Yeah.
just him.
Yeah, right. Like, who has he
Head of,
got left?
head of
Like,
his one man army sort of deal.
is Nicolette? What's
No, she's
Nicolette's
her own thing.
status?
They're competitors now. Like they've mentioned a few
Right.
times that she's running her own business now.
Chase?
Yeah, I mean Chase and Tanner and
Well, Chase went defected to Team Bristow, right? But then,
I think Chase went home with his tail between his legs.
right.
Is what we've been told. I can't remember where Tanner's at. I don't know. I think we have been told, but I can't remember. He's doing some inconsequential bullshit from memory.
Mm. Anyway, yeah. So maybe Y will be helpful. We'll have to see.
I like that. One of the things Y mentions is that basically what him and Musser have kind of pivoted to doing here is they're just recording everything so they can like sell it to nearby lords to
Mm.
let them know what the sitch is with the new Carmine. Which like this comes not long after that moment where Raquel openly calls the judges. She's just like, "Oh, they're just like a stopgap till a proper lord comes in."
Mm.
And the fact that like now we're sort of seeing these two kind of openly engage in selling info on the judges, it just definitely I guess we've always seen them as kind of the top dogs and the rulers of the region.
Mm.
But as we spend more time with people who live in cities and are like proper practitioners, you really get the vibe of how when you're not in a place like Kennet, the judges are really just not given that same level of respect and prestige.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and therefore they aren't as strong, right?
Yeah. Like, we saw Bristow's plan to kind of like supersede them as well. Like, it's just,
Mm.
it's clear that the majority of practitioners and these other lords and stuff very much view them as like fucking lording over terra nullius sort of bullshit.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. It's pretty gross.
I'm not sure how much that terra nullius reference will hit for our non-Australian listeners, but
Mm.
um, basically just implying that their jurisdiction has no authority.
More than that, implying that like there's no organized structure here, and we
Yeah,
are civilized. What's the word? Making it civilizing it, making it
yeah,
civilized by adding a lordship structure to the area.
yeah. But there's definitely there's this conception that they exist to be replaced when a place is ready.
Mm.
And that's just like, yeah, it's helping reframe, I guess, the judges. Within the context of this story, you're led to sort of see them as the top dogs, and I think it's
Mm.
interesting to get more insight into the perspectives of people who just don't really see them in that way.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Um, so yeah, Guillaume arrives and gives advice and gifts to the trio, who quickly head to the town center to try and catch the conspirators.
Oh man, and this guy, he's getting worse by the minute.
Yeah, yeah.
He almost calls Lucy like Jord something. I'm assuming like Jordan. Which again I assume is his old like boyfriend guy who he's
Mm,
mourning.
mm.
Um, yeah, he's deteriorating so quickly. We're definitely reaching the Guillaume climax very soon.
Yeah, but it's worth noting the gifts he gives here are so useful. Like the gifts are so they're like the exact thing that the Kennetiers need right now. That
Yeah, which is
I
exactly
strongly
his
think,
bullshit.
yeah, like these are going to be things that help decide whether the Kennetiers win this fight or not, and we kind of see that already with the glass and the hints that he gives. So like, God, I wish we had Pete Guillemay on our side. Like, if Pete Guillemay was around, Marcy would be so absolutely fucked, and it just is really tragic. I also suspect this is like the penultimate time we're going to see Guillemay. E.g., the next time we see him is a series wrap on Guillemay.
Yeah, I'd almost phrase it as I think this is the last time we'll see Guillaume as Guillaume. Like
Mm,
after
mm,
this, the next time we see him, he'll either be in the process of or have just finished getting winterified and sort of not quite be the person who we know him as. Or he'll be on the throne. Still hoping that prediction was correct.
mm. Yeah.
Uh he actually has a line here where he says like, "And for you, Verona, a belated gift, the last one I have to give out." And that line, like the last one I have to give out, I was like, oh, he doesn't just mean in this conversation. I think he means overall.
Yeah. Um, yeah, 100%.
It's worth talking about what his gifts for them are, though. So, like, because for Lucy and Avery, he pretty much just reminds them what he's been teaching them the whole time. Like for Lucy, his advice is, continue to trust your instincts; they're better than most, which he said a lot. And then for Avery, he tells her to continue like chasing her own light, which is what the check marks have more or less been trying to get her to do.
Mm.
Uh, and then so Verona's is really fun because she's the old one out because she's the one who Guillemets never really managed to connect with and offer anything to, like his words. And what he gives her is like a bit of concentrated Maricica power and a reminder to use it in moderation. And again, I think this is really fun because like the comparisons between Maricica and Verona have always been there and are still very much there. And
Mm.
this idea that like Guillaume has obviously sort of failed to help Maricica. But what he's done is like give Verona a concentrated piece of Maricica with a thing that it's like you have to use this in moderation or it will hurt you. Like what a great it's so perfect.
Do you think what do you think the odds are on on Verona using it the third time. Is it 100%, or do you think there's a slim chance she won't?
There was definitely an indication because she was like, "Oh, I shouldn't use it the third time," and Guillermo sort of is like, "Well, just make sure the third time's the right time," which definitely
Mhm.
felt like it was the story saying she's probably going to use it a third time.
And just like you framing it in the way you have of like a thing that requires you to have moderation is like to me the clearest marker of like, yeah, Verona's that's not who Verona is.
Yeah, although that's like that, making that decision might be what stops
Yeah,
her
it might
from.
be the right decision at the same time
Yeah,
as well. Yeah.
but like I think yeah, what's really fun about this is uh Guillermo's always stood a bit away from Verona because she's been much more in Maricica's wavelength,
Mm.
and yeah, like him giving her a bit of Maricica and to hopefully like tip their scale. It's just such a fun idea. Like yeah, I love that he's coming in. Like this is such fairy bullshit to come in at this last minute and give them little gifts that will help like tip the balance way more than you think.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. we will. We'll see. We'll see. I don't know. Yeah. I think it's very useful, and they still don't really know where Marcy is. So after this Liz thing is either dealt with or failed to deal with, they are going to need to find Marcy at some point.
Yeah, but also like we just had a whole conversation earlier. They've been cleaning off the glamour. They're not meant to use Maricica's glamour around Maricica, and Guillermo's like,
Mm.
here's a superpowered chunk of Maricica glamour. Like what?
Yeah.
Like what big brain play is going to be? Can she impersonate Maricica? We remember Avery tried to impersonate Maricica and it didn't work. Do you?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Is it easier if you use super Maricica glamour? I just don't understand what his plan for this could be when it feels like everything else in the story has been telling us this is the exact shit not to use right now.
Yeah. 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 I don't know. We'll have to see.
Like I
I'm
trust
sure it'll be
Guillermo.
something wild. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
mean, do
trust
you
him. I
trust
just don't know what
Guillermo?
he's thinking.
Not that he's untrustworthy, but that he's so far to winter. Maybe I don't know. I don't know.
But this is such basic
It's
like
basic
don't do
stuff.
this. Like
Yes. Yeah, I
like he's
agree.
not
But
that he's not that bad.
yeah. So yeah. The oh, sorry. One other thing to note is this coin thing. The coin that Avery gets, where
Yeah.
that she has clearly turned down important time with her mum, like that, she kind of cuts herself off, but obviously it's like planning for Thunder Bay stuff seemingly. Yeah, I'm excited to see the fallout of that when we next get into Avery's head.
Yeah, it's been so long since we've been in Avery's head. There's a lot to
Mm,
catch up on in there.
yeah.
But you're right. I love this very like pathy
Mm,
super simple metaphor for like, hey, you can have a journey later, but you have to pass on like an experience or a journey right now. Like it's such a hilariously simple premise that fits into this world of like pass on a journey, get a later journey, and like juggling that balance it would be such a monkey's paw
mm,
power.
yeah.
Uh, like it's a bit easier for Avery right now because I think that you can make a pretty good argument for passing on shit a couple of days before leading up to today. But like,
Mm.
what an awful dilemma to have to face all the time. Like after this, like if you're just going about your day and suddenly a coin appears before you're about to like go out with some friends, and then it's like, oh
Yeah.
shit, like do I?
Do I do it? Yeah.
Yeah, should I stay at home and play video games instead, or do I like, yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I think it's wonderful. So yeah, the Kenneteers reach the town center, and they realize that the flyers around town are changing. The battle is continuing. Verona gives a call to Matthew and Ken confesses that he is starting to feel weaker.
it's worth pointing out as they do their like fast travel through the ruins using Avery's coins.
Mm.
Verona makes note of like the fact that as they're flashing past, she sees a bunch of echoes, and she recognizes Bree amongst them.
Yeah, what do
And
you think that is?
what stood out to me at first, because I was like, oh, that's weird. Oh, I guess it's because of the Hungry Choir. Like,
Yeah.
she had some traumatic experiences here in town. But like now that we know what happens to her while they're over here, I think it's pretty clearly that she got. Like this. I think this is foreshadowing the fact that she's been kidnapped.
Mm.
Like it may not have even been a Brie Echo. That could have just been her in the ruins. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. We don't know, really, do we? I hate how little we know about what has happened to Brie right now because it's fucking terrifying. But
But I think like, it's great. It's sort of great foreshadowing like, on the second
yes,
read.
yes,
Because the first time, the first read it jumped out to me as like, huh, that's a bit of a weird thing to
yeah,
specify, but it makes sense that there'd be one. And then you see it on the second read, and you're like, oh fuck, Wobbo's just toying with us.
yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think like the fact that there could be a Brie echo or potentially just Brie herself here. Like, what could that mean? And I don't know yet. I don't know.
I think it's just telling us that something traumatic has happened to Brie very
Yeah,
recently.
yeah. Um, So something else that happens here, Lucy realizes that this is not they're not meant to be able to get updated info from the contest as it's going on. Like something's going wrong
Yeah,
here. And she unfortunately does not continue that train of thought. But yeah, Lucy, you got this. You got this, Lucy. You can figure it out. I believe in you.
yeah. She instantly sort of groks that there's
Yeah.
something off about this. Unfortunately, it's like it's such a big brain leap to be like from there to oh, we got to watch out for the bird that didn't go into the fight because there's so many logical steps needed to get there,
Yeah,
including
but
noticing
even
that one of the birds wasn't there. Like,
yeah.
but the fact that she even got this far, that first step of being like, there's something sus about the fact that this is coming out is
Yeah.
really perceptive.
Yeah.
Especially because, like, my understanding is still that the only reason that was really possible for the ephemera to do was because the barrier was a little weaker because of the extra, like the I don't know the minions that people are allowed to bring
Mm.
in.
Hmm.
So, like, it would be very easy to see that this is happening, and then make that step and be like, oh, maybe it's because the minions are allowed in now.
Yeah. And not
Um,
make all the steps needed.
yeah. Whereas, like, Lucy's like, it still shouldn't be this easy, and I'm like, ah, fuck, that's clever.
Mm. Yeah. I'm really enjoying. We're in the stage now where we're seeing the pieces starting to fall into place. Right, we'll get into Liz in a second, but I'm just so like watching it all unravel is so fucking satisfying.
Yeah, uh, it's so good. Like just this fairy plot has essentially been building up for the entire story,
Yeah,
and like it's coming together so well.
yeah. We've only really seen the first step of it now by the end of this chapter, and already I'm just like, oh, this is so fucking juicy.
And I love like watching them think about it as well because like something that jumped out to me is when they're like, "Oh, Ken's getting weaker, quick, let's go there." My
Mm,
immediate thought was, "But what if that's what she wants? Like, what if this lets her in?" And then, a couple of paragraphs later, I think Lucy's the one who's like, "Hold on, though, guys. Like, what if this is what she wants?" And I was like, "Oh, I love reading a story like this where the characters have that license to be trope aware."
yeah. Yeah, it's great. It's very good. Yeah, the thing about whether by going to Ken they're gonna reveal Ken's location obviously is not part of this one, but I suspect it. I wonder if it's gonna because they've paid lip service to that idea. If it's gonna come up for something else like the furs, although that doesn't seem quite right, or something else. I don't know. Um, Jabba potentially. We'll see. I don't know. I just think
Yeah,
it's
it could
interesting.
do.
Um, so yeah, the gang finds Ken. Wait, that's not Ken. It's Liz. Liz is edging Ken out of his role, basically. And it all starts to click.
I yeah, I love this because like the amount of times we've talked about how Ken and Liz complement each other, and the
Yeah.
Kenneteers even call this out as like they're listed side by side. I think everyone's always known that they were a little bit similar in concept, but
Yes.
like I wouldn't have thought this was something she'd be allowed to do in this way. So it's like that great sort of reveal where it's super obvious in hindsight, but there was like that one logical leap that I never really would have made that meant I
Mm,
didn't see it coming.
yeah. I think the bit that we're learning here is that Liz's ability to amalgamate such a wide group is enough to make her take Ken's seat. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, because I guess I didn't think of Ken's thing as a seat. I just thought Ken was Ken. Like,
yeah, exactly.
and I think I saw like a thread on Reddit like a while ago, actually kind of predicting this, and I was sort of like, I don't think that's how Ken works.
Mm,
But obviously that person is a lot more tuned into this than I am because that's exactly how it works.
yeah.
Um, And I also want to point out, I love that the person who spots that this is Liz is Verona because she sort of looks in Ken's eyes and she sees this like determination and fire that isn't there. And like, this is right after comparing Ken to her dad. And I just love that, like, of course, it's Verona who sort of notices that Ken actually has like a bit of energy and purpose to him. And it's like, well, that's not Ken or my dad. And that's how she realizes it's Liz.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a wonderful thing for Verona to put together. But yeah, God, it's just so I don't know. Just it is just all clicks so perfectly.
Yeah, and I mean to just sort of get into the fairy plan stuff here.
Mm,
One of the things I like is in her sort of villain monologue here, Liz actually really spells out that whole aspect of the fairy plans where she kind of openly discusses how contingency based this all is. Like she's like,
mm,
if you hadn't guarded Ken, we would have gone and weakened Ken to make this easier for me. But that's fine because we didn't need to because we could do it this way. Except then we needed Jabba, but you did take Jabba, so then Marcy had to go get Bree, and I wasn't actually
mm,
sure she'd be able to do it, but she did because she always does. And it's like cool because it's helping to reinforce that idea that fairies aren't Contessa. They work on contingencies,
mm.
but it also really gives you that sliver of hope that like this is the big example I'm talking about of like the evidence that there's been more pressure on Maricica than
Yeah.
it would appear.
Then it would
Like this is
appear.
this is that moment. It feels like Liz has won, and you're sort of like, oh shit, that dam has burst. But
Mm.
they've made Maricica work for this a lot more than they could have.
Yeah, and they've obviously obstructed the plan enough that like originally they weren't going to know what was going on at this point in time, right?
Yeah,
Like because of all the stuff they've pulled, they have now gotten the opportunity to potentially slow or stop this Liz stuff. Like it's
yeah,
getting them time, which might be enough to make the difference.
yeah. Like Liz is a bit surprised to see them already.
Mm,
But it's not just that. The other sort of silver linings I'm pulling out of this. So first of all, they do still have Jabba. So now Jabba is a battery they potentially have access to.
mm,
I think the other thing as well is like obviously so they had to take Bree, which means like Maricica took a bunch of risks because she had to go in to get Bree.
mm,
Um, but the other side of that is like because Bree is a battery that they weren't willing to use. That was a whole argument we had about whether it was okay to use Bree's Hungry Quiet juices.
mm.
Maricica has gone and like sort of taken that. So yeah, now they've got
Answered that.
Jabba as a
Yeah.
battery. I think they are a little bit more willing to use than they were for Bree.
Mm.
But also, like the other side of that is like I think Zed has been operating at a reduced capacity because like
He has to kind of not get 100% involved because he's kind of between the two sides here, or
yeah,
two
what
of the many sides here.
yeah, but also like he's been quite like the jovial sort of one. It's not that he's not taking it seriously, but like he's always the one worrying about like the prices of stuff. Like he's
Mm,
definitely been the one who's been like, oh, I've got to make sure I've still got a lot of my stuff for after this. If Maricica's
mm,
just kidnapped Bree, Zed's not going to be counting like his shit anymore. Zed's going to be going
yeah,
all fucking out.
we're gonna see
Um,
hardcore Zed.
yeah, like I'm really excited to kind of see like Zed's not going to be here to fuck spiders anymore. He is
Mm,
like I could almost see him calling in other shit from Ray being
mm,
like calling like he'll take out loans of power to
mm.
fucking get Bree back and punish them for taking Bree. And Zed has been the comic relief for a while now, and I don't think he's going to be fulfilling that role when we next see him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fuck, it's a good point. Um, I think the other thing that we get here that I really like is since Ken has been on Team Kennetia the entire time, we've seen how like practically useful city magic is, and now that Liz has kind of taken Ken's position here, we see the flip side of that, and it's so
Mm.
disorienting and like and hard to deal with. Like they're just getting like shifted around and shuffled around, and when they're like moving really slowly. It's like it seems so fucking painful.
Yeah, we've spent like the last handful of arcs being like, well, city magic is so cool and so powerful.
Yeah.
This is the best. And it was all just leading up to being on the other side of it. What a great like reversal.
Mm.
And again, my first thought when Liz sort of took it over was, oh wait, shit, wasn't like the whole thing about the house on Half Street being impregnable because Ken was the only other person who could get in there?
Mm.
And then that's sort of what Verona calls out at the end of the
Yep.
chapter. It's just such fun, like everything's fucked sort of energy. The
Yeah.
the one bit of hope we sort of still have is that a lot of the time what we saw with Ken was that a lot of his stuff cut both ways. Like we talked very recently about how when he put the Kenneteers in like protagonist mode and pulled in their slack, it meant that like they were closer to allies and other named characters, but also closer to the enemy ones. So hopefully those rules still mostly apply for anything Liz does. Like if Liz tries to make it easier for somebody to get near the Kenneteers, like, that's going to mean that it applies to the good and the bad. Similarly, like I remember the power costs were attributed to like how important something was. So there's been limitations established for Ken that I'm assuming will still mostly apply to Liz here.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the thing is Liz is able to, to tap into this kind of temporary power source to make her stronger, even just for a limited amount of time. So I don't know. I feel like we might see some like extensions of what power level it seems like Liz is at, just because she's more willing to spend power that she only needs temporarily.
Yeah, like that's a really fun aspect of this. Is there's those limitations, but with anything in this universe, you can kind of pay to get around them. But it's going to be how much that costs, how much she does have to spare. Because do we know what's Liz's plan? Like, we don't know what her goals are after tonight, right? Like, does she want to stay Ken? Is she? Yeah, like, is this a temporary thing? Like, it's
surely not. Who would want to be Ken? It's like wanting to be the Carmine. Nobody wants that.
Well, so the interesting part of this, this is my hot take from this, is like obviously Liz isn't great, but like neither's Ken.
Yeah, of course.
Like there is an argument to be made that like even say they defeat Maricica and Charles. Not that I want Ken to die, but there is an argument to be made that leaving Liz in charge of Ken isn't the worst idea, because at least she has ambition, and that was what was really frustrating about Ken.
Well, we kind of learn that Ken was intentionally created to be as weak and useless as possible, right? So it's not a big confidence booster in our main man Ken, is it?
No, like so I'd want to I'd want to work with Liz a bit to like calm some of her more murdery, evil villainy tendencies, but there is definitely an argument to be made that swapping Ken out for her isn't the worst series of events. Although I don't know. I wonder how much she'll take on aspects of Ken if she stayed in the role or whatever. It'd be funny if this wasn't meant to be a permanent thing for her, and then her punishment was she got stuck there.
Stuck
right a bit
in the role of Ken.
Yeah. So no, fair enough. You are Ken now. Fucking figure it out.
So yeah, the chapter here ends with the Kenneteers talking about what they need to do next now that they know what's going on, and there's a lovely bit of Avery and Verona saying, "Well, we need to do this," and they both say different things because obviously Avery cares about Bree, but Verona is kind of right that they need to get the furs.
Yeah, like we sort of talked about some of the Lucy stuff last week. The shit is hit the fan. Like this is the time where it's a bit okay to be like, sorry, I don't know that Bree's the priority right now. We should go manage the furs. Like, saving Bree at the cost of losing everything is probably not the right call. Which I hate saying, but maybe they'll split up.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good move. We'll have to see.
I mean, they're not working that well together right now anyway, like as Lucy said.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the end of the chapter. We don't know where Bree is at, but hopefully she's all right. There's maybe a sliver of hope that Bree has not actually been kidnapped, and this is just a big prank by Liz.
No, because there's a line in the next chapter about.
Oh yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Flint mentions that a girl in tattoos got dragged away, which has to be Bree.
No, that could be something that's unrelated. That's unrelated to everything that's going on here. Okay, that's just what happens in Kennett sometimes.
Yeah. What's funny is like I wonder how much of this was only possible because like Bree had been using the Hungry Choir, and we sort of know that after she does that, she gets a bit weaker and really has to like reinforce the protections and like focus on that. So it's interesting how much her using the Hungry Choir to help Verona actually opened this door. So, yeah. I know. I'm just excited about this because I'm really keen to see angry going all out Zed, which I know is a terrible thing to say, but
Yeah,
as long
bloodlust
as he's a
said.
fictional character, I feel fine like indulging that fairy part of me who's like, I can't wait to see angry Zed.
Yeah.
He's always been the nice affable one, and yeah, we're gonna get to see him go all the fuck out. Especially while
Yeah.
we're getting, we're about to talk again about like horrors and what can happen when you mix realms practices, and that was
Mm.
originally taught to us in the context of mixing city magic and Zed magic. So um
Yeah.
good luck,
Interesting.
Liz.
Well, good luck Liz or good luck Avery maybe or good luck Zed.
I mean, yeah. Oh, I'm wondering if Zed will be more willing to weaponize that aspect of his powers than he has. Like
Oh,
if he,
interesting.
like, I'm thinking this might be an angle to try and attack Liz.
To cut off Liz's opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah, make her like that guy inside of Plath.
Mm. Yeah. Interesting. So yeah, we next get into break 4, starting in Keiji's head or Lucas Olson's head, let's say. Lucas Olson watches as witch hunters enter the arena, and looking at Cleo, he is reminded of a nearly forgotten memory. Um, we're exploring Lucas's backstory immediately here, and yeah, yikes. God, it's so fucking heartbreaking, right? Because we've talked about looking at Cage Rattler like, oh shit, this is a like evil Cage with somebody who seems pretty pristine and pure inside, but who knows what the fuck's actually going on. But no, he's just like he cared too much.
Yeah, yeah, this is a really fun tragedy. Like there's really big I don't know if you're familiar with We Need to Talk About Kevin.
Mm,
Um my mom was the one who got me onto it, which I'm trying not to read into, but it's basically like, yeah, this story about a kid who was sort of, turned out a psychopath and did a bunch of murders as a teenager, and it's like this story from the perspective of his mom after the fact trying to figure out what went wrong.
mm,
And yeah, there's real vibes to that. Like this couple who was objectively just really great and trying to make the world a better place and succeeding, and then you end up with Cole, and it just yeah, I really liked this moment where like Lucas takes this moment to sort of be like, is it because he saw like our adopted sons when they were getting better, or is it because I did something? Is it because my wife did something? Like the sort of the real torture he's being put through is this knowledge that there probably really wasn't anything he ever could have done. That was just, to a certain extent, always how
mm.
it was going to be. And yet he's
Yeah.
stuck here trying to think if he can make it something that he could have fixed.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's obsessing over it so much, I think, is an indicator of him being a pretty good dude.
Yeah, although like that's the really interesting angle is like what Lucas calls out a number of times is that he's this great example of like, I don't know what the term would be, toxic forgiveness, or
Mm,
like he was so desperate to keep giving Cole more chances and to try and fix Cole that he kind of let Cole keep dragging other people, including himself, down.
mm,
Like the metaphor of him being in a prison made out of coal, I think even Lucas calls it out as like a pretty obvious metaphor. Like,
mm-hmm.
uh, it's such an interesting extra little angle in a story that's been talking about, yeah, reformative justice and all sorts of things, like just pointing out, but also there are these people who are too willing to give people another chance, and it hurts them and the people around them.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a tragic tale. We obviously, I don't think we know enough about the actual specifics to know, was Lucas too forgiving, etc.
I
I think that's
I
something
think
that's,
he seems to think he was, and I'm inclined to
yeah.
agree to an extent. Like there was I think the trap he fell in was like something clearly needed to change. Like what they were trying wasn't working.
Mm,
Like I feel like the trap he walked in was not, yeah, like not being willing to let him go at the same time as trying to like turn him around.
mm,
Like that's why he's in the prison. Whereas like the thing to do might have been to yeah, I don't know, get him some extra help. I don't.
mm. But we
I
don't know
obviously
that Lucas didn't do that, right? Like,
yeah,
we,
true.
we're hearing this from a very like, I feel, a guilt-ridden perspective from Lucas, and so he's obviously going to dwell on the things that he thinks he didn't do enough. I don't know.
But I mean, it's worth. Yeah, I just think it is an interesting extra angle for a story like this to explore because we're trying to be better and forgive people and whatever. Like,
Mm,
but then also there are certainly times where it just like that can bite you in the ass and send you backwards. Like,
mm,
if you try to forgive someone like Massa, it's probably not going to work out in the end. Like, and that's what's so hard about this is sometimes maybe the answer is just to have cut Cole off and let Cole suffer.
mm,
And that's a shit choice to make, but maybe it's right.
mm. Yeah, maybe. Um, so yeah. Just before we continue to explore Lucas's story, the other thing that's worth taking note of, the casual displays of power from the judges to like put barriers in the way of the witch hunters. I just found it so fun to watch. It's just cool.
Yeah, and it also like really reminds us how powerful the judges are because I feel like the witch hunters have just constantly been built up as scary because their shit lets them get around most magic.
Mm,
Like they have bullets that keep hungry choir kids down. Like they've always got all these tricks, but with the judges, it's very much just the judge can just put up a wall and they've got nothing.
yeah, yeah, 100%. There's what can they do? They could just fruitlessly unload their gun into this into this barrier.
Which they do. I mean, they live up to their sort of like that's what you see in TV a lot. I always love it when there's like a force field around the villain and the fucking people from Stargate still unload an entire clip into it. And it's like, mate, it's clearly not working. Stop.
Yeah,
But that's not how witch hunters do.
yeah. And to be honest, in a world where appearances matter so much, it's probably not the worst idea to give it a few more rounds, even though it seems fruitless, just to check that it actually is.
Yeah, you're right. It's like a lot of things in this world will like have something that's only going to work 2 or 3 times and kind of rely on you thinking that it's going to keep working even though it won't. So like the fact that witch hunters just like cut the Gordian knot by continuing to fire might actually work for them more often than not.
Mm.
But it's also just that whole like witch hunter ethos of like if you tell them to stop, they say how high sort of deal.
Yeah. So yeah. So Cage Rattler wants to fight these witch hunters, so they step forward and start calling their allies. It's going okay for a little while, and then things start to turn. So Lucas calls for a test. Yeah, these horrifying boogeymen. I'm kind of with. I can't remember which witch hunter says it, but like, oh, these are two of the strongest witch hunters we've ever seen, and he's got them on a fucking leash. Like, holy shit, it's awesome.
Yeah. Do you reckon like I'm just trying to get a feel for how Boogeyman like do you reckon the milkmaid is at this tier or is she like a low tier? Like Boogeyman, I don't like it.
Yeah, they're spooky.
Like, yeah, I'm like because if milkmaid is, I feel like the implication of these ones being high tier boogeymen and the way the story talks about it, it started to make me think: does that mean that the milkmaid is low tier because she was still pretty fucking scary?
Mm.
Although I suppose she wasn't the same sort of physical threat, was she? She like Raph managed to get away.
Yeah, yeah, just some spooky stuff.
Yeah, and Pig Dog Man was another boogeyman, wasn't he?
Oh yeah. True. I guess Boogeyman's whole deal is feeling like they're impossibly spooky, but then maybe you'll just kind of get them in the end, you know?
Yeah, or except kind of for cage rattlers.
Yeah, true.
I mean, also, I suppose the other thing here is like, in a way, you almost think Cage Rattler would be the worst person to fight. 'Cause, like, when I picture the concept of a witch hunter, like, I'm thinking along the lines of hunters from Supernatural and tons of other franchises. And it's like, if there's anything they're going to be able to beat, it's presumably like all these boogeymen seem to be like very horror monster, like horror story monsters.
Mm.
And like, I feel like that's probably like this, in a way, that's like, like something like a ghoul or a low tier boogeyman, that's probably just a Wednesday for a witch hunter, right? Like maybe I'm wrong, but I was just like, if there's
Yeah,
anything the witch hunters will
true.
be super effective against, it's
This is
probably horror
their
movie monsters.
yeah, true. It's their bread and butter, huh?
Like we're about to see them get cleaned out by a horror or whatever the fuck you call plath.
Yeah.
But like yeah, I just like boogeymen just feel like the sort of thing they're probably super effective against because that's what it feels like most of them would kind of be designed to fight against.
Yeah, you're right. It feels like it's definitely their vibe. Let's talk about the test, shall we? I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see it here, and we'll see it a bit more in a bit. But it's very interesting. Lucas, despite losing and being about to die, he really has kind of changed the dynamic, or at least added another dynamic to this fight. One that clearly is going to play into every single fight that we see from now on, right? I'm excited to see John's test, which will be obviously something horrifying to do with Yoda, or maybe he's already passed his test because he shot Yoda for the greater good. I don't know. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I get the vibe that the reason that the judges sort of wanted this test thing to happen is, yeah, because like in a way the reason they chose John 10 years ago was because he kind of passed this test. Like he was
Mm.
he was willing to sacrifice his own personal life for that commitment to the greater good by killing Yolda. And so yeah, it's kind of the worst case scenario for John is just being made to relive that. Like
Yep.
his test might just be, "Hey, are you still going to make the same
Would you still
decision?
do
Kill
this?
Yolda
Yeah,
again."
exactly. I mean, what if it's not Yoda? What if it's
Oh fuck! What if it's Lucy? That's so good.
yeah.
Oh, shoot Lucy in the head to get the judgeship. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so ready for that.
No.
That's
No
gonna be
thanks. No thanks,
it's gonna be
Wildbo. Please
deliciously
no.
painful.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, so well, obviously, I think as like Lauren goes on her spiel about it, we'll probably talk more about the side of this that's like relating to who wants the throne a bit more.
Yeah.
But I feel like the other side of it is this is just like a great little dramatic beat, like this idea that now, as well as just these fights, which are sort of going on now, you can have this moment within the fight where you can like lock yourselves both in a sort of super test, and one of you comes out with an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably a silly comparison, but like it felt very gamey to me, and it reminded me of there's like a variation of Fast Four tennis. I don't know if you're familiar with Fast Four tennis.
I am not.
It's like a new sort of ish version of tennis that's taking place in like some tournaments and side tournaments. It's designed to make the game go quicker.
Mm.
And one of the things some Fast Four tournaments do is they have this thing called a power play, which is basically once per set, the server is allowed to declare that one of the points is a power play, which means it's worth double points.
This
And
is
it's
very
very
Mario
corny.
Tennis. I love it.
Yeah, well, like the whole thing about Fast Four is it's very much designed to just make it more of a spectator sport than like
of
the
course.
more old school. Like Fast Four is very much the like
The 2020
cheap free to wear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the whole concept of the power play is kind of ridiculous, but it actually makes it really fun. Like watching, like I remember watching like a Federer versus Kyrgios match, and of course Kyrgios fucking loves Fast Four because it's all about showmanship.
Mm.
And yeah, like the power play is actually like very fun when it happens, because if somebody does it while they're, down an advantage and they can turn it into a sort of instant win or something, like it's stupid from a sport perspective, but as a spectator, it is just kind of simply fun. and that's what this is. Like it's like this idea that during a dramatic moment you can be like, no, let's do a test.
Yeah.
And I can turn it all around if I win. Like it's classic Wildbow. Like he already had a chapter where there was a Carmine fight, and he couldn't handle, even though it's totally different characters, he couldn't handle just writing us another fight. He had to add some dramatic moment to it.
Constantly escalating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's wonderful. Yeah, so Lucas fails the test. So Cage, Rattler, and Lucas lose. But before they are crushed, they get one final chance to say goodbye.
Yeah, it's brutal.
I love the reveal that Cage is Cole as well, of like,
yeah,
not only has Lucas's actions led to him getting cast down into the abyss, but he was cast down with Cole, and his care for Cole literally turned into a prison. Like, fuck me, it's brutal.
The metaphor, it's so good. Like,
yeah,
it's so simple and effective. Like again, this is one of those things where you sort of read it and you find out the Cage is Cole, and you're like, oh, of course it is. That's such a literal interpretation of like Lucas's whole struggle. Of course, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And because I think it was, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but like, because there's been another Cole in this story. The guy who had the lantern that Edith got in the flashback of her interlude, like that guy who was sending his stepdaughter to the abyss, that guy was called Cole. So up until this point, I'd been assuming that this guy's son was that Cole. And it was like, oh, okay, so that guy cast his father down into the abyss and then went out and became a piece of shit who cast his stepdaughter into the abyss. Like, sure, that sort of makes sense. And so I thought I'd made the really clever connection already, but it turns out, no, this is a different abyss affiliated Cole.
Yeah.
And
How many of them are there?
yeah. Don't name your kids Cole because they're going to end up working with the abyss. And everything we see about this place makes me think that's just something you shouldn't bother doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't name your kid Cole. Is the moral of the first third of this story, of this chapter, because then they'll become into abyssal stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah. Next, with Lucas dead, we jump next into the head of Francis. Francis wants to fight again, but Cleo decides to try and 1v1 Plath.
Well, also not quite 1v1. I think she keeps like 2 or 3 of the other witch hunters, but she sends most of them away
to get healed up. Yeah. I was thinking about this. Like, is this a strategic play by Cleo, or is this a merciful? We're probably going to lose, so I'll give you a chance to get away. I definitely think it's the strategic play.
Yeah,
because I have no faith in Cleo.
Yeah, I agree. My read on Cleo is that if she thought she needed Francis, she would have kept him. I think she thought she was going to win that more easily, and she was thinking more long term. Like, I mean, like this sort of gets into the whole thing with Cleo, but yeah, I think she wanted Francis for a later fight, and that's kind of what helped cost it for her here. Although not that I think Francis would have actually helped, but yeah, I think this chapter does that really good job of just kind of dissecting Cleo's hypocritical bullshit, and like we kind of wrap up that thread that was opened up when we first met her of like she had the collection of practitioner fingers that she was doing their abilities from, and the whole vibe she gave off every time we saw her was like she claims to hate practitioners and others, but the shit she's doing is like the worst. Like she does the same bad shit that they do. And I think the guy's name is Estrada, really sort of spells that out for us in this chapter, where he's like, she plays their game and she does the ultimate version of that, where she ends up in here as a competitor for the throne playing their game, and it costs her. Like, it's such a perfectly fitting end to her whole deal of this has always been who she is. She was just as bad as the worst practitioners, and she meets the end that all of them kind of deserve. That power and greed catches up with her. Oh, sorry, lust for power and her greed catches up to her.
Yeah. I'm going to jump away from that thought for a second, because I want to call out the Lauren leaning on the throne thing, because I brought this up, I think, a few chapters ago. And I was totally right, Elliot. And I just deserve some respect for my great pick that Lauren is totally up for some shenanigans.
I don't think she was.
Nah, she is. It's confirmed. No. If Breastbiter says it, you have to agree.
No, because I don't think anyone actually thinks she was doing it on purpose. I think she was just like, she's looking for that spot to lean, and she ended up in Reed's arms instead, as temporarily as those two can get. But yeah, no, I still stand by what we sort of talked about last week, where it was like she was leaning on the throne, and there was the claim shit, which is why Breastbiter's right, and she gets taken off of it. But like, I don't know that that's necessarily exactly what she was thinking. I think she just did need a place to lean. Probably a bit of both.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Bit of both.
I do like we haven't really talked about Francis yet, even though this is his section. But I wanted to bring up here, especially because like when we learned Breastbiter's name, Francis is like, oh, gross. That's, and he's like repulsed by the idea that this guy's called Breastbiter. And because like we learned Francis's fairy, and that's fairy with a Y, related backstory here. And what I love about it is all throughout his segment, even though he's very anti-fairy, you can still see how they've really tinged the way he sees the world. Like you can take the boy out of the fairy, but you clearly can't take the fairy out of the boy. Like he's disgusted and irrationally hates everything goblin-y. He obviously instantly picks the fairy bullshit going on and notices the gap in the wall. Like he reminds me of Daniel and Shelley in that way, that he hates the fairy and he's sort of moving away from them, but in doing so, he's still very much seeing the world through a fairy lens, even if he's trying to invert it.
Yeah, definitely.
And just like the real tragedy for him, it wasn't even actual fairy. Like it wasn't fairy AE. Like,
Yeah, it
he
was the little
got by the shit
pixies.
ones.
Yeah, that's the saddest part. Oh.
And he ended up getting away because they had a fight about, like, who had the best hair. Like, it's so it it's so delightfully just unclimactic and shit, his whole origin stories. He got kidnapped by dumbasses who had a fight about who can dance when nobody's watching, and then he eventually got away. I'm like, yeah, just,
Classic.
yeah, because I guess in my head I'd assumed it was something similar to Daniel and Shelley, but of course it was different and more tragic in a way.
Yeah. So yeah, Cleo tries to cut straight to the end of this fight by shooting Macrexaplath very quickly, but things really get out of hand from there.
Hey, I
Hey.
get it.
But yeah,
lots of
this is
hands.
a very fun little bit because obviously we've been thinking, well, how the fuck is Crookaxaplath going to actually like fight? And we see it here, and it's fucking horrifying. I love it conceptually, and obviously you kind of alluded to the fact that Zed hinted at warped space before. And I was worried at the time that that was indicating that that might be what happens to a Kenneteer, but now we know, thank God, it's just to set up Murgaraxaplath, which is very fun.
Yeah, and what it makes me wonder is, like, because we know Monty is sort of the same thing as well. Like, does Monty have any secret capabilities along these lines that we weren't aware of? Like,
The power to
he
give
seems to
a
be
million
less
high fives.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know if it'd be hands, like, because his thing seems to be like the way he infects systems. So I don't know if he's like less
Yeah.
materially based, because I assume it has a lot to do with what realms, like not just who you are, but what realms you're going into when you get like folded over. Like I don't know what realms either of them were like doing this with, but like with Monty, he seems to be less like involved in like physically expanding or whatever. But like it's a reminder that like Plath was way stronger than we really would have expected given his size, and it's
Yeah.
at the very least it feels like a reminder that Monty's someone we haven't really thought about or talked about for quite a while, but we've seen his ability to take over systems is pretty fucking intense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, could we stick him in Liz?
And just see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, get Miss out of the way. That's been said before, but like, yeah.
Well, she's already out
like
of the way. She's off. She's off keeping an eye on
Oh,
Jazz.
I think if we're sticking Monty and Liz, she has to be fully out of
Sure,
Kennet.
fair enough.
Yeah, so just leave Jazz alone for a little bit. The date seems to be going fine. But yeah, no, yeah. I wonder what this might tell us about Monty, because it seems like Plath was way more crazy powerful than we expected. And I wonder if we should be thinking about Monty in that way again.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I guess we can keep an eye on it. But yeah, Cleo sees that she's fucked up, calls for the test, and wins it. But even with that, she's still not strong enough, and eventually gets cornered and ripped in half by Mograxaplath. As Francis notices the hole in the wall.
Yeah, I love how our second example of how these tests work kind of reinforces that it's not an instant win. Like,
yeah,
this isn't playing the heart of the cards card, where like you instantly come back from any insurmountable odds, like dumb anime bullshit. This is like,
it's an edge.
you know, like, yeah, karma will be a bit more on your side if you win the test, but like you still have to not be already completely lost.
Yeah.
Also, sorry, before we completely move on from Plath's death here, it's worth pointing out he totally, his hands look like those hands from Ocarina of Time, right? Like, am I the only one who was picturing them like that? You know the ones I mean? Like,
I guess.
Okay.
I don't know anyone else was picturing that. You know what this made me realize, Elliot?
Yeah.
So far, three of the 4 contests we've seen, have ended with somebody being ripped in half. So obviously we had breast and face ripped in half.
Yeah.
This one and Maxpluth and Cleo ripped in half.
I don't know that I'd call Cleo being ripped in half, but she certainly was ripped.
She was ripped in half. We'll call it ripped in half. And
no, because half implies 2 pieces.
Sure,
there was a lot more than 2.
Okay, fine. Anyway, and then the witch hunters tried to were in the process of ripping Cage Rattler in half when Lucas surrendered. So, is there something about that? Is that anything?
Yeah, well, they all get break.
Oh yeah, of course, it's break. It's break. That makes sense.
So I don't know. I don't know if you saw this. This is getting very tangential
Mm.
and contemporary. Walbo posted on Discord this morning that he's been doing something really obvious with the break chapters, and he's not sure if people just aren't noticing it or if nobody's been commenting on it because it's so obvious, and
What
it's
is it?
ruined my morning.
Wait, what? What? Sorry, what Discord is this? I'm looking at it now. I want to read out the quote. This is our the Doof Discord, the Doof Media Discord that you can
Yeah,
access
I've got
at
this here.
doofmedia.com/discord.
As an aside, I've been doing something across the break chapters, but nobody's remarked on it. I'm not sure if it's so obvious that people aren't remarking on it, or if it's flown completely under the radar for thousands of readers. Anyway, so that's been my
What does
morning.
that mean? Okay.
I like
Is there
Coro
any
on our Discord.
context? There's no context.
No, Coro on our Discord has a good theory about how each break relates to like one of the pillars of humanity. So like Ray's the coin, John's the edge, and then there was like discussion about Alabaster being the timepiece, and this one being like fate. So the fifth one on Tuesday will be the pale.
But that can't be right because we are expecting at least 2 more break chapters according to our
I mean,
competition
I don't know.
bracket.
This just just what you said there. I just had to put because this has just been. I read this about 2 hours ago, and the 2 hours leading up to this recording, I've just been sitting here like trying to come up with plans. But then Walbo says it's obvious, so everything I come up with feels too convoluted. Like, yeah,
Huh. There's a comment that I've just seen that I'm not. Oh yeah. Okay. So a comment from I'm easily impressed says there's a crack or break growing larger in the art heading. So in the break art headings, you can see there's like a crack that is opening up.
Oh, I missed that one. Is there really?
Yeah.
Because that has definitely escaped my notice. Oh shit, there is too. Oh, what a fucking
So
another
maybe it's
Doctor Who
that.
reference in Arc 13.
Maybe it's that. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. God, I used to pride myself on being the one who noticed the changes in the art heading more than other people. I've completely skipped that one. Yeah, oh my god, there is too.
Maybe it's that each of the break chapters that we've had so far has been from the perspective of somebody whose name spells out the word break. So break
I
one
tried that. It doesn't work.
is Radical Bray Sunshine. Okay.
Well, yeah, you've got the R. You got the R for Rad Ray, and you got the A for Alabaster.
Yeah.
John, the first break is really where it starts to fall apart.
No, because he's Big John, we call him for short. And then obviously this chapter we have KG, Francis, and Macraxaplath, and their names all start with K. Yeah, I don't know. Who knows?
It's close. It's close. It just needs a little bit more massaging, and I think you're almost there.
I feel like I'm 90% there. Anyway, clearly dies, and there's nothing like an absolutely brutal death to really make you feel for a character that you hated.
Yeah, it was sort of like, part of me is like, play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Yeah.
But then also, I don't know that anybody deserves a bunch of hands going under their skin and exploding them.
Yeah, pretty rough. Good on John here as well, by the way, for completely calling out the judges on their absolute bullshit. The bullshit of not letting the what do you call them? Assistants? Allies? Minions? Minions. Not letting the minions leave alive is absolutely fucked. Like, apparently the rule was gonna be, oh, now your minions just have to stay in the contest and fight, amongst them, become an entrant themselves, which is absolutely fucked.
See, again, I think this is one of those things where it's that dynamic that the judges do, because the Sable is the one who is like, they sort of can't. And then John almost calls this out. He's like, you haven't said what else they're going to do. Like, you haven't said they need to pick a new leader or anything. And then the Alabaster's like, oh, maybe we can let them go. And the Aurum sort of lets them go. And I think, again, this was always the plan. It's just this is this bullshit routine they're in where the Sable has to challenge everything to make people justify what they do. And maybe it helps because it's John who is the one who kind of seems to make this decision that they should be allowed to leave. It's continuing to set this precedent that John has a relationship with them where he can make them do stuff.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe it's John starting to play a role in that dynamic you were talking about.
Yeah.
Starting to slot into that dynamic very naturally. So yeah, the witch hunters regroup, leave the arena, regroup, and then prepare to leave Kennet. But before they go, Francis wants to use this cool information that he's discovered. He shoots Lauren through the gap in the wall.
Yeah, of all the people to fucking choose.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. He picks the one that really is going to have not much impact on the contest as a whole.
I
Because
actually think you might have said it backwards. I have a feeling Lauren was getting ready to concede.
really
Yeah. Let's get into that maybe more when it's Blath's perspective on it. But
interesting.
I have a feeling she was about to
She was
concede
about to
and get
concede
unmade.
because she found out what the test actually is.
No, I think I think her whole thing here was an elaborate suicide. Like we sort of talked about this earlier, but
Oh, I see.
like
She was going to
she
concede so that the things would, crush her and destroy the thing inside her.
yeah, there's like a much more permanent death that you get here in this arena, and I think because one of the things they mention is that she's temporarily dead. There's like a line that jumped out to me later on in the chapter.
Yes.
And so I think the thing is this familiar she's got bound inside of her brings her back to life if she dies. So like the whole point of her coming here is like this is a competition where, especially with the Sable present, you actually die. So
Interesting.
she's come here to die.
To get erased.
Yeah,
Huh.
and I think part of like her whole thing was like trying to figure out the judges. I think what she wanted to do was maybe do her suicide in a way that helped the candidate she liked the most.
Mm.
And what happens just before she gets shot is she has this realization where they're all kind of shit.
Mm.
John's arguably the best, but he doesn't really give off that vibe in this conversation. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly what she was thinking, but I think she came here to die, and
Interesting.
she was maybe just about to do that anyway before Francis let the beast out.
But does that mean my impression was that the doe, whoever we would get Lauren back after this conflict? I mean, after
Not if she
this one
loses.
battle. I mean, sorry. So now that she's won against Plath, she's gonna, the doe, whoever will bring her back to life, the sable, I guess.
See,
And
I didn't think the judges were going to bring her back. I think it's just what happens because of her
interesting.
relationship with her familiar.
But then surely she can just, off herself in the next one, if that's really her plan.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is, I guess it depends on the timing of it all because
Mm.
like I think
Maybe
the
the
thing is
familiar's out to fight now, and that's it.
yeah, like it's like Bree and Nicolette with bindings on people. Like now that that's been weakened, she may not have that same level of control over it because the impression I've got at the moment is she was willing to concede, but the familiar probably isn't. And now
Mm.
that it's not as bound, maybe she's not going to be able to make that call in the way she wanted to.
Yeah, you're right. I'm seeing this line where the doe says she exhausted all options. If she participates and brings something that small to us, we can manage it, and then just goes on. But that line to me jumps out as confirming what you're saying.
Yeah, but
Hmm.
yeah, it might sort of be out of her hands a bit now.
Yeah, well, rough. Yeah, Clint in this exchange with Francis really comes across as the sane one because his approach is like, hey, we don't really know what's going on here. If we get involved, it may make it way worse. Francis's determination to do something is kind of understandable given what he's just seen, but I don't know. Have they just made it way worse? Has Francis just made it worse? Like, we don't know specifically what Maricica's up to with the crack in the wall and the bird. So it seems like the crack was just to get the bird out. So maybe this isn't part of Marcy's plan. But if what you're saying is true, and now Lauren Snyder is going to basically wreck shit up and make the contest a lot more of a contest and not just her, throwing away one of the rounds, which would presumably speed up the contest and be against what Marcy wants. Maybe this is part of it.
Yeah, I don't know that I think Marcy is that on top of things that she could have seen that of Francis would be able to do this. Like I wouldn't say it is part of her plan, but I think it's interesting to discuss whether it helps or hinders her plan.
Mm.
But like, is somebody using the gap in the wall like this something she would want or not? Like she may have more big picture kind of hoped the crack would get used by something like this.
Mm.
But I'm actually leaning towards no. Like I don't think this helps her. Because something that Breastbiter brings up is this actually serves John because the fire that the kid lights puts more time pressure on the competition.
Yeah.
And it will make it go quicker, which serves John. And just like also Francis reminds me of Shelley and Daniel, and I'm thinking that he might be in that realm of aware.
Mm.
which are people who like use the fairy to fuck up the fairy,
Yeah.
like Shelley and Daniel did.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if like this is him kind of turning some of Maricica's shit against her.
Yeah, interesting. Very
But
interesting.
yeah, we'll have to see how it fits in with all of her all of the other stuff going on.
Mm.
Like this could be something Maricica can easily work around, could not be.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right. I think the witch hunters, specifically Francis, feel like they're just a bit too unknowable for Marcy, who's, as we know, not the best with just like humans in general
Yeah.
to really account for.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be surprised if she kind of could have seen anything near this specific happening.
Mm. So yeah, we then enter Raxam Milliplath's point of view here as it prepares to fight Lauren Snyder. She immediately calls for the test, which Paraxaplath fails.
Yes, because when it gets the space to do the test, the man comes out and he doesn't want that. He's like,
No, yeah,
there's this like again, this is where the Alabaster's bullshit comes back in because she's the one in this space with him, and he's like, "You can't let me take the throne. This thing's a monster. It's not me. It's just a monster." And she's like, "Nah, like yeah, there's no mercy. Like the merciful thing to do would be to kill this guy."
yeah. Well, that happens by the end as well. So
That's true.
yeah,
The big thing though that we need to talk about throughout this whole thing's point of view is that every time it vomits up blood, it says that it's doing it by mating with the universe. What does that
Yeah.
mean?
Let's not think about it too much. I think.
No, I want to think about it a lot because I need to.
Mm.
That's very confusing and upsetting, and I want to know more about it. Like,
Yeah.
what is mating with the universe? Is that mating with the spirits? Is it like what?
What does it mean? Who knows?
What
Who
does this
knows?
mean?
Yeah. But Lauren elaborates more on what the test is here, and we get a bit of like, does anybody actually want this role? Like, does anyone want the role of being a judge as opposed to just using the contest or the judge role for their other purposes? Like,
Yeah.
does anybody want this role?
Yeah, so my understanding of the tests is that it's basically about testing your commitment to the position, right? Like
Yes.
they're specifically testing will you compromise yourself if it aligns with what the role will require you to do. And yeah, so obviously because we got 4 people left. We've got Lauren, who we're pretty sure is here to die and doesn't actually want it. Reed doesn't really want it. He just doesn't want to die and for his dad to be even more mad at him. We know John's situation, which is he doesn't really want it.
Yeah, he's
and
achieved
Breastbite-
everything he cares about right now.
Yeah, like I don't think he hates the idea. Well, no, he kind of hates the idea of it. Like he doesn't loathe the idea of it. He's willing to put up with it, but he doesn't
Yeah.
want it.
Yeah.
And then we know Breastbite is just here to get away from what's her face. So yeah, no, you're right. Nobody here actually wants to be the judge.
Yeah, 100%. It's yeah.
I think what's really funny, I love this moment where when Lauren turns to like John and she's like, "Do you want this role?" And he doesn't really say anything, and then the text is just sort of like a man behind him, made like an annoyed sound, and like this is great use of the whole interlude mechanic because I was just instantly like, "Oh yeah, of course, grandfather's pissed." Like grandfather's the one who's been giving him shit and for like screwing over Lucy, and now grandfather's finding out John doesn't even really want this job. Like,
Yeah.
no wonder grandfather's a bit pissed at that reaction.
Yeah, of course you would be. Yeah. So Lauren, in the middle of going off on the judges, gets shot, and the thing inside her starts to emerge, and it's something so horrifying it even spooks the horror. So Gramaxalunga Plath concedes, and the contest continues.
I love the way this is delivered on where it's like, this thing's been fucking terrifying. It just tore Cleo to absolute shreds. And then it gets a sense of what's inside Warren. And Plath's like, "I'm out. I don't want to fight. Kill me." Like, what is inside of her? It's terrible. Like, yeah, great way to sort of lead into the next break.
Yeah, it's a fun setup for the fact that John presumably is going to have to fight this thing next, which is going to be horrifying.
What's even worse, he goes in without his squad. He's like, everyone else say he's the one who says I'm going to 1v1 whatever the fuck's in Lauren's head.
Yeah.
Like what's he thinking?
Yeah. Didn't he see that
Plath
this
took
didn't
one
work
look
out?
at this thing. Plath took one look at this thing and decided it would rather die than fight it. And John's like, yeah, I'll take him.
Yeah, he should have learned the lesson from Cleo when Cleo decided to not have as many allies going up against
Yeah.
Gargo Axoplath. And, like, clearly it's not going to work. Anyway.
Yeah, I can't wait to see where this goes. But yeah, part of me is just like, John, what are you fucking doing? Like, he has to have a plan, right? Does he have something that's super effective against
whatever this is?
what was it? It was like some super powerful but simple spirit that's been tainted by something. They said it bit into something really rotten and that poisoned it. And I just like to think that it was like
Bad apple. Some old.
I was thinking just a
takeout.
really gross goblin.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Something real deep from the Warrens there.
Yeah. But yeah, like the contest is continuing to escalate. Lauren's beast has been let out. Plus, the arena is burning down. So, like, who knows what the fuck's going on? We talk about, I don't know if this is something Maricica wants or predicts or not, but, like, who knows? Things are just kind of continuing to ramp up as we rapidly approach the grand finale.
Yeah, I still think the fire serves John more than Marcy, so I'm hoping that this is, again, like...
Yeah.
I think what's really fun about, like, this whole dam pressure system is, I think it kind of goes the other way, and I feel like that's what the Cannoneers haven't quite clocked onto, is that, like, what this is this is a dam with oil on one side and water on the other, and you're both poking holes trying to infiltrate the other one. And it's like, every little victory they get here, like, every time they're stopping her and putting pressure and making her have to go after contingency, like, when they eventually corner her, it's kind of just bursting the dam in the other direction.
Yeah, true.
And like this is the sort of thing which makes me think, yeah, like what Maricica is like, yeah, this is the sort of thing that's going to put pressure on her to make sure she wraps up something else she's doing a little bit quicker than she might have wanted, because she needs to get Charles in there quicker now that it's burning down. And this is the thing, is like, with the dam, you can let her get all these leaks in, but if you're poking holes and putting pressure on it the other way, you can make it collapse inwards. And this is where you lose the dam metaphor, because that's not how dams work.
But yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
That's interesting.
Like that's sort of how I'm viewing this now, is like, yeah, they're getting all these small wins and they're putting more and more pressure on Marcy, and yeah, it just works the same way. All they need to do is completely corner her for one moment, buckle the whole plan completely one time, and they should. It'll be the same as the fairy thing, where it'll be like, oh, now she can't do it.
Yeah. So yeah, we leave this chapter. Our bracket predictions weren't quite correct for what we would see in Break 4, but still we've gotten to effectively the same point. We just have Plath and Cage being knocked out, as well as the Witch Hunters coming in and getting knocked out immediately. So good try.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the the whole like elimination bracket didn't quite work out, because like Plath fought twice in a row. So,
but we knew that we are now at the round of 4. We were expecting to be down to our final 4 for the next break, and that's where we are. It's just that we expected Snyder to have been knocked out and Cage to have survived, and instead Cage is out and Snyder has.
But what I mean is, like,
survived.
But the witch hunters sort of came in and like threw out the whole bracket for a little bit there. Like,
yep.
It was never going to be as simple as just an easy elimination bracket, but we have ended up surprisingly close, I suppose.
Yeah. Hey, here's my top strategy tip for the Cannoneers as well, by the way. Matthew's the one who hid Jabba, right?
Yep.
So they should get Matthew to get Jabba and give Jabba to Ken. Ken uses Jabba as a power source, contests for Elizabeth.
Oh, that's good.
It's a good plan, right?
I was just talking about trying to use Jabba before, but I didn't think of that. I was thinking they could, like, I don't know, use it to build a big rune or some shit. That's way cleverer.
Use it to
like
that'll
undermine
continue
Liz.
the contest for the Ken role, and that will hopefully buy them enough time to get the furs somewhere safe or whatever.
Yeah, because if they can even that competition, just so at least Liz can't really do what she needs to do. Maybe Ken can't either, but like, the point is, city magic is a very powerful thing on either side, so having it on nobody's side is better than having it against you.
Yeah, 100%. So if you're listening, Cannoneers, that's my top strategy tip for you. And if not, well, good luck.
I think what's really fun about this as well is we haven't talked about the fact they've lost their phones.
Yes, Liz
which
has knocked out cell service.
Yeah, we were talking last week with Lucy's whole thing about coordination. The way that they
Mm,
really got the edge over those other witch hunters was they cut off their ability to communicate. And I was saying that's what
yeah,
Marcy's doing. They've got to turn that around on
interesting.
Marcy, and Marcy's just stepped it up a notch. Now they
I like
literally
that.
can't separate without losing contact with each other.
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah, that's good. I love that. Um, so yeah, we are about to see the final numbered chapter next week, probably. So spicy. But before we wrap up the show, let's of course take a trip through some predictions as we reach the final stages of this story. See what everyone thinks is going to happen. I'll pull out one first. Prediction from I'm Easily Impressed, who's featuring a lot in this episode, actually. But yeah, so thanks to Lucas, I'm Easily Impressed says, thanks to Lucas, we know the contest can be modified. So potentially, if they're all fighting to take down Law and Spirit, instead of killing each other, this contest can be redefined. Contest of leadership, we're talking about leadership here in the Carmine role. Maybe instead of fighting each other, they can turn the seat into a sort of Carmine committee, so that instead of them murdering each other for a seat they don't want, they can share it and use that ability somehow to kind of redefine the rules here a bit, which I think is interesting. I don't necessarily think it will play out exactly like that, but we obviously have been thematically thinking about like the power structures that exist in this world and how we can make them feel a bit better. Um, so yeah, I can see this being something pretty interesting. I don't know, like instead of the Carmine seat, we have the Carmine committee. I like it as an idea.
Yeah, I feel like we've had so many reminders that like this has to be a competition where only one person's left standing. Like I agree. I'm not sure if the rules can be bent that much, but I find this super interesting as a thought experiment for like, can they do something that involves a bit more teamwork? Because you're right, that would feel so on point for Pale that they
Mm,
find a way that involves working together, not killing each other.
mm, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we've been told by the story that you can't just like yeah form a Carmine committee like that. Maybe I'm wrong, but like I
Yeah, the Carmine contest feels like it's set in stone enough that it can't quite be this, but I think
yeah
there's some merit to the idea.
yeah. There's something to this. Yeah, concept absolutely.
So what prediction did you pull out, Elliot?
I've pulled out a prediction by this person who I keep pulling out their predictions and I can never say their name. This is a type. This is
No, that's
um
perfect. That's exactly how
Iplath.
you pronounce
I may
it.
as well just
Yeah,
add a
chuck a
plath
plath
on
on
the
the
end of
end
that.
there. Yeah.
So I've seen a few people point this out, but this was the first one in the predictor. Just the hilariousness that Verona's middle name is Juliet, when she's already named after the setting of Romeo and Juliet. Uh,
Yeah.
and so obviously, Zlaus's little Plath, has theorized that like as well as that just being sort of a funny joke, maybe there'll be some tie-in to like her whole thing with like Jeremy. So their actual theory
Mm.
is that like in a way that kind of mirrors how Romeo and Juliet have the confusion and both suicide at the end. Maybe Jeremy will discover Verona's letter that she wrote him, the like "if I'm dead" one, and become like aware
Mm.
slash awoken.
Interesting.
Which yeah, I like as an idea. I like the idea of taking this Romeo and Juliet link in Verona's two names and maybe trying to like pull a story beat out from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. How could that fit in though? Like I'm trying to think.
Well, so the letters are programmed to sort of. I can't remember what hers is. I know with Lucy's, it's like if she dies, the connections
Yeah.
get broken, and then her mum will find it. But
Yes.
I can't remember how Verona didn't Verona like send hers to Jeremy already. There was like something. I think she like emailed him, and there was like restrictions on when he was allowed to open it. I'm just if that gets disrupted, or if there's some reason Jeremy thinks she's dead, then he might
Yeah.
open it.
I
Um,
but I'm trying to see like with one chapter left, how could this
oh yeah,
possibly play in a legit way? And I think the only way I can see it happening is if it's not something that is good for the Kennetiers, but it's like Marcy fucking with them, like getting Jeremy involved as a way to fuck with Verona or something. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's absolutely not an idea Verona would be on board with at first. I'm almost more wondering if it's more of an epilogue thing.
Yeah, yeah, maybe.
Like, yeah, it could have something to do with something something to do with Verona and Jeremy's relationship or
Yeah,
not relationship. I don't know what the term to use is, but yeah, like
it's a
after the
relationship,
story.
even though it's not a
It's not a romantic one. Yeah,
relationship.
I view the word relationship as meaning romantic in this context, but
Sure, sure.
it doesn't have to. You're right.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, interesting. I could see it. I'm not sold yet on exactly how it'll play in. I could see it as an epilogue thing pretty neatly, I think, but we'll see. So yeah, uh, Elliot, I'm serious about the one that I put in the
Oh,
doc.
sorry. Yes, for reference, I just told Ruben that we forgot to come up with a new discussion question.
We
But
didn't.
okay, yeah,
I put
that's
one
fine.
in
I
there,
think
and
I
it's
came up with the last
awesome.
one, so you can do this one.
Anyway, speaking of discussion questions, we have just wrapped. Since it's been a fortnight, we're going to dive into answers to our previous discussion question, which is John making the right decision even if he loses? We got a lot of answers here, and I think a fair number of answers I feel operated on the level that there may be two different types of answers. One was kind of assuming that he's right or that he's got a good chance at winning. It's an okay decision, but there's no better decision to be made. Like, it's not great, but what can you do? Um, yeah, I think we got a lot that were along that line of like, yeah, I don't fully agree with it, but hey, what can you do? Kind of vibes.
Yeah, I would have said that I feel like the majority of them, were the lines of like, look, it's not a perfect decision, but it's probably the best one.
Yeah.
Um,
Or like thinking of it from a very utilitarian framework of like, John is
yeah,
sacrificing his life for the lives of, his 9 or 10 dogs of war or whatever, right? And
yeah. In
therefore
fact,
it's a fine decision.
yeah, that leads directly into I'm easily impressed
Oh, welcome
answer.
back. 3 for 3.
Um, basically, yeah, I'm easily impressed. Sort of was like, let's go through a bunch of ethical frameworks and see if it's the right decision. So that utilitarian, absolutely yes,
Mm,
especially if it lets him become the judge and make wider good change.
yeah.
They then started like listing a bunch of other frameworks like deontological, virtue-based
Mm,
ethics
mm.
before quickly just giving up on even considering them and pointing out that this is why it's not a fair question because there's too many different things to consider. It's such a broad, unanswerable question. To
Which,
which I
yeah.
say yes.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
why we asked it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess I'm easily impressed. Sort of uh, points out that like you can't quite give a concrete answer to this because it depends what frame of reference you're using to measure it.
Mm. Yeah. Um, I found the answer from Gyroda to be one that I really agreed with, which is basically saying John's inherent desire to sacrifice himself has prevented him from considering whether there's other options that will also allow him to rescue his dogs, right? Because John intentionally kept it a secret and refused to explain to, let's say, Lucy why he's doing what he's doing. And I think part of that is because he knows that if he had done that, they would have tried to find other ways to free some of these bound dogs. Like, almost certainly there's, we saw Avery trade some of her money that she was getting for freeing others. Almost certainly that's something that could have been done with whoever the inheritors of these bindings were, now that the OG guy is dead, or even just challenging it more fundamentally and trying to kind of get that challenge across the line. Like, I feel like that could have been done, but John wants to sacrifice himself, and that's why it's the wrong decision, because he's playing into this very toxic, I don't know, like vibe that he has that has been pointed out by grandfather.
Yeah, I really like the observation that he never asked the Kenneteers if they could look into this.
Yeah, like he
Um,
he cares about this so deeply, but he's played into it in the exact way that he, I don't know, that
yeah,
yeah. We
I like
got, this was something that
the
Sengachi also mentioned. Sorry, I'm kind of combining a
yeah.
bit these two answers here, but Sengachi also mentions like yeah, on paper it kind of seems like the right choice, but he's doing this classic thing of continuing the cycle, and that's why it's the wrong choice, because he is justifying, he's finding ways like an addict or something to justify continuing what he's doing.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about that when we sort of first learnt it. We were like, "Oh, this finally explains how he's escaping the loop like he wanted to. He's not. He's an idiot."
No,
Um,
exactly.
although it's interesting, so like with Sangachi's answer, I would have said like the point I felt like they were really making was this idea that there will always be a war to fight. Like there will always be something to sacrifice yourself for. But like if you're only ever doing that and you're not actually getting that time to like be with Lucy, basically, like you've lost the fight. Like there's no point fighting if you're not gonna also take advantage of it when it's there.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas like with Gyroda, I thought, yeah, this idea of pointing out that like Gyroda made the case for if the Kenneteers had come to him with a like, hey, we can get the rest of the dogs out by doing XYZ, he would have probably logicked himself into still needing to do this because this way is better, because it would have cost the Kenneteers something, obviously. And
Yeah, like he's so
like
desperate to do it his sacrificial way, even though I mean we don't know that it would be possible for them to do it another way, but it definitely feels like it could be.
yeah, well, like Gyroda's point was that it was like he is using them as an excuse, and he's saying, "Oh, I'm doing it for them," like blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But like what he's really doing it for is atonement. Like he wants to make up for being the survivor. Like he's got a bit of survivor's guilt for killing Yolda. Like, and so it's like, yeah, he is doing it for them to some degree, and they are his primary excuse. But if you took them out of the picture, he'd probably still try and justify getting to go do it.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I really liked. I also enjoyed their TLDR of their answer, which was, it's a false dichotomy, and John needs a fucking therapist.
Yeah, 100%.
I quite liked Juby Doo's answer, which was basically saying, pending like any context that we don't quite have and we haven't quite considered, John has a really good point that he may not have been able to really find complete peace knowing that he took this selfish move and became a dog while they were still bound. Like, because he would have kept the dog tags, and I think that's a valid point where if he was going to live like 70 years as Lucy's familiar and be happy with her and still have to carry around the dog tags, it would be hard not to feel shitty about that fairly often, knowing you could have gone and done this.
But yeah, I mean, like that answer also fails to take to account the fact that there possibly are other options. Like, you know,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
like
But I mean,
John
like,
sees it as either do nothing or sacrifice myself, and those aren't the only two options, John.
yeah. We got quite a few answers though, which also seemed to focus. Definitely when I pitched this question, I was very much thinking of the Lucy versus the dogs perspective. Whereas we got quite a few answers that were much more focused on the whole entering the competition as a candidate idea. Like,
yeah.
even path with a 1 in it. I'll let you guess where the 1 is in that name.
I think
Points
it's
out that like, yeah,
Elven Path.
oh, I hadn't even considered that. Yeah. Anyway, Elven Path sort of takes what I think is my opinion when you consider this lens of, I hate it as a decision, but like, yes, he's the only good candidate, and like,
yeah.
you know, like if you do the competition without him, we're basically guaranteed a shitty Carmine.
Yeah, who's the next best option? I really don't have an answer to that. I
mean,
I would
for
say
me it's
Reed.
Breastbiter.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'd pick Breastbiter over Reed because like
fair enough.
Breastbiter seems like he's kind of shitty, but like you could do worse.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel like Faceful would have been a decent candidate as well. Like, wouldn't have
I think
been
he
too
would have
rough.
been a really shit Carmine.
Yeah, but that's fine.
Yeah, actually,
I'm choosing a Carmine that I could live with, you know?
Yeah, I just I don't know. I'd be interested to see how he would have done in the tests. Like, obviously, with Faceful, it's difficult to judge because his whole point was that he was this. He was in the Alabasters chapter because he was our stand-in for ignorance and innocence.
Yeah.
And like it's hard to know how he would have done if he'd been well informed. I worry that he would have been too merciful, a bit like Lucas.
Now that I think about it, I also am curious what it would be like if Cleo was the Carmine, the Carmine Cleo. I mean, like,
oh,
what
I think
would
it would be a very short and violent reign.
Yeah, but I
like,
just kind of want to see it. I just kind of.
Oh yeah, well, we heard that her first test was, would she allow sanctuary for a group of young practitioners?
Yes.
And we got told that her answer wasn't correct, but it wasn't totally out of line and had commitment behind it. So she killed them, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. Right.
Like
100%.
She got like the Alabaster was like, hey, look, here's a Verona and an Avery and a Lucy. Will you help them? And Cleo probably shot them in the face, which is like not the answer they're going for, but a valid Carmine move, even if it's expensive. So yeah, I have a feeling. I have a feeling Cleo's reign would the candle that burns twice as bright burns half as long.
Yeah.
Vibes.
Yeah.
Her and the Hungry Choir, very similar reigns.
Yeah. But yeah, Any other answers that you want to pull out? I think we covered all of the different sentiments that were there. We got a fair number of answers, which was good.
One last point that I thought was actually a really good comparison. Hero of Old Iron came in
Mm,
and was sort of saying if you compare this to like the classic trolley problem with like Lucy versus the dogs,
yeah.
in a life or death situation, I think a solid number of people with siblings would absolutely be ready to sacrifice themselves if it meant their brothers and or sisters could survive.
Mm,
And basically, Hero of Old Iron pointed out that really, like, there's not really a better analogy for John's relationship with the other dogs than like, a very close family one like that. So, leaving aside yours and Gyroda's whole point about it being a false dichotomy, like if we are buying into this
into the
dichotomy,
premise, yeah.
it's absolutely like you can't ask John not to sacrifice himself for a group of like 10 siblings because I think most people probably would. And I tend to agree. Like, I think if you're asking me to enter this competition where I probably wasn't going to survive, but it meant like both my sisters would go free, I think I'd probably do it.
Yeah, yeah. You're just playing into that false dichotomy, Elliot.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we can't just invalidate every other answer because one
Yeah,
is pointing
sure.
out that thing. Like,
Sure. But yeah, no, you're right. If you take that utilitarian framework, like, or even not, it's not even utilitarian. It's familial. It's powerful familial love, which is there is some nobility to it for this choice that John is making, but also I don't know. He's going about it in a funky way.
yeah, I think Hero of Old Irons just adds a really interesting angle to the utilitarian one because it's not just the utilitarian one; it's clearly the like the emotionally valid one. Like I think,
there's an aspect of heroism to it for sure.
yeah. I think there was an argument that like some other people sort of touching on where like he's chosen the trolley problem version that's like the utilitarian one and not the emotionally valid one. Whereas I think Hero of Old Iron brings up that he is very close to the dogs, and this is still the very emotionally valid decision to make.
Yeah. So thank you everybody for leaving your discussion question answers. We've got a new discussion question. As we see the Carmine contest, fighters from all around, all different types of fighters from all different areas are all coming together to battle for supremacy. And that reminds me of something, Elliot. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Super Smash Bros. So therefore,
I thought you were going to say that new Nickelodeon fighting game.
Well, sure, yeah. Which obviously is the original that Super Smash Bros. Is just a dirty ripoff of. No, obviously Smash Bros. Is just a ripoff of the original good fighting game, which is Digimon Rumble Arena, where you battle as different Digimon. But anyway.
PlayStation Battle All-Stars Battle Royale, another genre classic.
Yeah. Anyway, the question I wanted to ask is maybe a very niche and specific one, but I feel like there'll be a bit of overlap in the fandoms. If a character from Pale was going to be in Smash Bros, which one would you like it to be? And what would some of their moveset be? I love theory crafting Smash Bros characters, so let's bring some of that love into Pale. I'm curious what people think, who people think would make a good fighter in Smash Bros. So leave your answers to that in the discussion thread, which you'll find linked in the show notes down below.
Yeah, and you got to get it in, I think, about 3 days before when this discussion question is due. They are announcing who the final fighter will be. So you got to get your answer in before then so you can see if you're right.
Yeah, exactly. So, mate, what a twist that would be. Am I right? What a twist if suddenly...
It's not Rabbids, it's not Crash Bandicoot, it's not some stupid...
It's
Sword Boy.
John Styles. And then, of course, the final twist in Break 7 is going to be just as John is about to win the contest. He gets the
letter.
Yeah, he gets the letter. Mario shows up and they fight.
Knowing our luck, like if we lived in the universe where suddenly Pale was included in Smash Bros. And everything was good, it'd still be... We get Lucy, and all she'd get to do is like use her pen sword as like a shitty sword, and she'd just be like a Link clone.
She'd get her pink anime hair, her sword, and that would be it.
And it'd be like, oh, it's so close, and yet
so close
far.
To something cool. Anyway, leave your answer to that in the discussion thread, which you'll find linked in the show notes down below. But thanks for joining us, everybody.
So answer that discussion thread or discussion question in the discussion thread.
Mm-hmm.
You can also comment about the the episode or the chapters in general. We do get a lot of comments that aren't related to the discussion question, and I'm terrible at actually following through on responding to them, but I really enjoy reading them.
Yeah, me too. It's always good stuff. If you want to engage more with the show, you can check out our Twitter, which is at PaleReflectCast, or jump into the Discord that we've mentioned before, which you can find at doofmedia.com/Discord.
Yep, you can also find out about the other shows we do at doofmedia.com. We have our game club next week. So we'll be talking about Crypto the Necrodancer.
Yeah, if you've enjoyed Avery's trips to the promenade, then Crypto the Necrodancer is effectively that as a video game.
It is too.
Yeah, I'm sure I've made this comparison before. Maybe this is before you'd actually played Crypto the Necrodancer.
Yeah, no, I forgot it because I hadn't played it. And now that you bring it up, okay, I see it. Further proof that I would not be a good finder then, because God, I'm enjoying Crypto the Necrodancer, but God, I'm arse.
It is a challenging game. It is a tough one. But yeah, it's a very fun game. We'll be talking about that next weekend. If you want to support the shows on the Doof Media Network, you can go to patreon.com/doofmedia and become a patron. You get all kinds of cool perks. We have recorded and released one of our recent bonus content episodes, which was an absolute blast of a recording. So make sure you become a patron so you can get access to that.
It's also how you get to vote. So we're actually just about to start the vote for the next Game Club game.
Oh, yes.
So if you want your say on what we play after Crypto the Necrodancer, quickly go become a patron.
Yeah. And while you're on Patreon, why not check out Wildbow's Patreon? Because, of course, he's the one who comes up with all these cool escalating conflicts. He is the one where if we back his Patreon enough, he might have enough clout to get us a Pale character into Smash Bros. So if you want to see that happen, we've got a long way to go probably before we get there. But it could theoretically happen if enough people back Wildbow's Patreon. So become the change you want to see in the world.
What about another one? So you know how there was like the coins, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So something about, obviously you can tell I've really put a lot of thought into this.
Turn down an important trip and then take that coin and give it to Wildbow.
Yeah, stop traveling. I mean, you can't anyway.
You can't anyway.
It's 2021.
maybe this is...
Put your travel money.
COVID is just a conspiracy theory to get people more travel coins. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Well, no, it'd be the opposite. All these poor finders are fucking stuck in lockdown, and they're not passing on experiences either, so they're not getting coins. It's just a nightmare.
Yeah, being a finder, really the industry hurt the most by COVID is finding, because you can't go on any of these trips through the paths. And that's really sad. So spare some coin for Wildbow today.
Imagine being the one who brought like COVID to the ruins.
Yeah. Anyway. All right. Bye, everybody.